OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Bang on 7:30 this Tuesday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Gilroy and Eoin Sheahan with you all the way through until 10. Give us your thoughts. 0879 180 180. The dust is beginning to settle and people are starting to try and work out exactly how and why and when Dublin finally had their unbeaten run broken. Did it happen all the way back in the depths of the COVID training? Was it something more recent than that? Does it revolve around Cluxton? Pete McGrath had a great line about the Great Down team and how their greatness stole away like a thief in the night. Is that what happened? When was the night? When did their greatness steal away? We're going to answer that in the power rankings in just a moment. But before we do, Eoin, you're off on an adventure.
Off on an adventure, yeah. We're covering the All-Ireland finalists in the hurling this week. So heading down to Limerick and Cork over the next couple of days. And it should be interesting to see who have the biggest super fans, which city is bedecked in its respective colours in more emphatic fashion over the next little while. And just trying to see what it's like to actually exist in a county where there is a hurling final build-up, because it's not something that I've experienced ever in my life. The
smell of want off those Cork fans is going to be fairly pungent this week, right? Because it's been such a long time since they've been properly relevant, and even then, somehow over the course of 2 games, they managed to lose. It
should be an amazing occasion as a result of the Cork fans being there, and as a result of them being waiting for so long without a final, which seems to have just crept up to 8 years, kind of unbeknownst to anybody. Kind of felt it after 2013. It was like, I don't worry, this Cork team will be back, and it just never happened. There was a couple of near misses here and there, but they limped out of so many different championships. And the flip has sort of happened this year, where it's like, have they kind of limped into the All-Ireland or sneaked into the All-Ireland? And it kind of feels that a little bit, because we have one very dominant team in the land who are strong favourites for this Sunday. That is the sort of ideal scenario that Cork want to be in going into this weekend. Not too dissimilar to how Mayo would have wanted to go in against Dublin, for example, anytime they would have played them.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how much pressure that brings to bear on the players. It doesn't feel so far like Limerick have been in any way affected by pressure in these big games. I mean, you even think back to the All-Ireland semi-final that they lost, and the comeback that they'd made, and at the end of the game they really should have had an opportunity to tie that up and bring it to extra time. Would it have been extra time on the day at that stage, or would it have been straight replay? I don't know, but
replay probably. But yeah, that's I think a lot of people were kind of expecting that to be the rematch this year, weren't they, when they looked at the semi-final lineup, and expecting Limerick to bury that that afternoon a little bit, because it is something that I'd say annoys them at this juncture. Maybe not in 3 or 4 years' time if they manage to turn this into a 4 in a row, for example. But at the moment, it's like this could have been their 4 in a row.
And here's the question, right? What's better for hurling as an outcome?
Cork winning, I think.
Is it?
I don't know.
Limerick crowning their greatness as one of the best things that's ever happened.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They have taken the game to new heights, and I guess in hindsight, it may not have seemed it at the time, but in hindsight, Kilkenny, was that good for hurling? I think it probably was. I think that what happens afterwards then is a reaction from all the other counties, from 7 counties who are chasing Kilkenny and who are all taking their levels to such a height that the game had never seen before. And what then happens is you have the 2010s, which unquestionably was not unquestionably, I think people will say the 90s was the best decade of hurling ever, but skill-wise and intensity-wise, the 2010s was the best decade of hurling we've ever seen. And I think that process was accelerated because Kilkenny had brought the game to such new heights. It'll be interesting to see what happens in football now over the next little while, now that there is a little bit of belief on top of the whole acceleration of standards that Dublin would have brought into play. Will we now see a decade of really good football that we were used to seeing for the last 10, 12 years in hurling? That could be the reaction. So yeah, on immediate thoughts, it's the best result is the underdog always. That's who I'd always pine for, and also because Cork have waited so long for this, and the scenes will be incredible. But then having this great team continuing to win will probably bring everybody's level up just a little bit over the next little while. So I can see both sides to it.
The other thing is that the pipeline of talent that the Cork hurlers have produced over the last couple of years is so brilliant that you would expect them to be able to maintain this for the next couple of years. I don't know. That's the other thing. Maybe you need the victory to nourish it. And obviously Patrick Horgan is not getting any younger. He's at that stage of his career where in the Examiner today they're talking about the other nearly men who didn't actually win an All-Ireland and he's essentially top of the list at this stage. Himself and Ollie Canning, four All-Stars for Ollie. And maybe he needs one to keep going. Do you know, if he gets one now, he'll keep going for another couple of years, maybe.
Waterford players, obviously, you'd have to throw in there as well.
They're absolutely on that list as well. 7:35 this morning. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Let's exactly show you what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock. We're going to do our power rankings, much eagerly anticipated. A lot of abuse already coming on Twitter. We'll see how much abuse there is after that. Sports pages 8:05. Phil Healy, fresh from the Olympic Games at 8:15. Mick Bohan, the Dublin ladies football manager, women's football manager, 8:30. Graham Hunter at 10:09. And absolutely, truly remarkable press conference yesterday where Barcelona laid bare the amount of money that they are in debt. It's over $1 billion, and how they got there. 8 million given to a scout to recommend talent in South America at one stage in recent seasons. The football pod with Paddy and Andy recorded last night. Totes emotion on both sides, apparently. We'll talk with Tommy about that at 9:10. And then Kevin Kilbane is back with some relatively controversial views. And it seems like we'll get into those at 9:30. If you want to get in touch with us, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. It is time for the power rankings.
Some of these critics, these pundits,
I absolutely adore them lads. I have unbelievable time for them, but they're a great bunch, but it's not acceptable.
would like to play the hard man when they're on it. It's not very pleasant when you're trying to manage a team. All you're looking for is a bit of civility and a bit of decency, but they just dismiss you like you know, you have nothing to do with the bloody occasion.
We don't usually do these this late in the year because things are fairly linear from this point onwards, where Dublin win their semi-final and they win their final and everybody else is just in a stack and they stay put. But 2021 is not a linear year. 2021 is a year where great change has happened. I just want to remind people of what we're looking at when it comes to the top half of the power rankings, because there was a little bit of confusion last week, I think. I'll run through these very quickly. At 16 is Offaly, at 15 is Westmeath, 14 is County Cork, 13 is Clare, 12 is Derry, Roscommon are in at number 11, Kildare are in at 10, Meath are in at 9. So that is the second last page, if you like, and then we'll get into the top 8 here. No movement on any of these, by the way. I just wanted to clear them all up after last week. Armagh are in at number 8, Galway at number 7, Monaghan at number 6, and then Donegal at number 5. Tyrone currently at number 4. At number 3 this week, down one place, is Dublin. Number 2, down one place, is Kerry.
Whoa!
And at number 1, up 2 places, is Mayo.
A troll.
How is it a troll?
What do you mean?
They've beaten the 6 in a row.
They have.
All-Ireland champions. If
have,
they don't go to number 1 after that, then what
Kerry
do
are
you
still
want?
favourites. Is this, like, really, are you just trying to ratchet up the pressure? Honestly, like, all joking aside, before we get into the actual, the merits of this,
No?
you really think after this that
After Saturday.
you're making Mayo the favourites now?
I do think that there is room for this to move after the other semi-final. By the way, I'm not saying that this is stuck until
I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I think if Kerry, no matter what happens, you won't change this now, because Kerry win by 10 or 15 points, you'll go, COVID.
Yeah.
Kerry win a close game, you go, told you. That's what you're doing.
Maybe.
You've completely cemented the fact that you're going to be ratcheting up and hyping the shite out of Mayo between now and the All-Ireland final.
You could say that, and I can appreciate why you would call me an awful, cynical person like that, because maybe it's because it's true. But this is not about anybody else in this list. This is about clearing the decks for Mayo to arrive at number 1. If we managed to clear the decks last year for Cavan and Tipperary to arrive in whatever it was, the top 5 or 6 places as a result of their provincial wins, then we got to clear the decks at number 1 for Mayo to go in there after beating that Dublin team on Saturday. And look, I mean, who cares if this is if you think that it's about ratcheting up pressure on Mayo or it's about playing down Kerry's chances or whatever. You can think that. It doesn't matter. This morning is all about Mayo.
Okay.
And the last couple of days have been all about Mayo.
Okay. Just to open the kimono, lift the curtain, explain how the sausage gets made. My phone went off at 1:55 a.m. late on Saturday night. It was a call. Oh, you're looking a bit guilty there. What's going on there, on? Who was it?
That was me.
5 to 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
Owen obviously had got the latest missive from. I didn't answer stupidly.
You should have.
I would have regretted now for the rest of my life. I did not answer, because whatever it was, it would have been. But I'm given to understand that an impromptu High Council meeting of the Grand Wizards of the Kerry Mafia was in situation and in session, and you guys had decided at that point Mayo were going to win. That was it.
It was either that or somebody who was angry about your Springbok take. To be honest, if I could probably remember, it would be great, but unfortunately, I don't have that information to hand. Of course, there will be a Grand Council meeting, but I mean,
and you're definitely making Mayo favourites. That's it. Irrespective of the fact that the bookmakers still make.
There is so kind of like trying to take away. I'm trying to make a case here that will stop you from bringing it all the way back to this Grand Council or whatever nonsense you're spouting there. I'm trying to make a compelling case here for why Mayo deserves its surge up to the top of the power rankings. And I don't think you need to look too far to find it. I think that there is something about a new arrival of this Mayo team on Saturday night. Even though we've become quite familiar with them quite a lot over the last little while, there was just something about some of the personnel that stuck out to me. And one of those people, for example, being Padraig O'Hora. Who are you backing right now in an All-Ireland final if he's marking, say, David Clifford? Are you giving him every chance of being the guy who manages to put the brakes on a great footballer? Because maybe I'm getting carried away here a little bit, but I'm like, there is that level of performance in a player like him, and it's not just him, but he is obviously one of the newer names, one of the people that we are becoming more familiar with over the course of the last year or so. And maybe it is a complete overreaction to them beating Dublin, and maybe not. But
actually, look, and to get into the seriousness of the whole thing, Clifford's form is not at the level where we had anticipated it would be just yet. Now, he hasn't played the All-Ireland semi-final in Croker. Sorry, maybe his form is wrong, but the returns are not at the level that we thought it might be. And there's every opportunity for him to kick 2-5, 2-6 against Tyrone and get that level of confidence back. Tyrone, by the way, Kerry are 7-1 on to win that game.
What?
Yeah, that's what it is at the moment.
I'm not going to sit here and make a case that Tyrone are going to be Kerry after everything they've been through, but it's Tyrone. 7-1 on in the game against Tyrone is just, if that doesn't give you the heebie-jeebies as a Kerry person, then I don't know what does. But 100%, I'm not going to sit here and make a case that Kerry are going to lose that game because that would be disingenuous. So I think they will win that game.
To cut you some slack, I think that just some doubts about where Clifford is at the moment allows for some wiggle room. And actually what we've seen from Mayo from the 40th minute on maybe in the All-Ireland semi-final and the second half of the All-Ireland quarter-final suggests that they are definitely going to be able to put in a level of performance for a period of time in the All-Ireland final. My concern would be that the first half performance of both games was lacking in direction and identity, and kind of at stages looked a little bit like crisis, and that if they do the same in the All-Ireland final, that they're going to come up against a side who are absolutely ready to score goals and create enough chances to be too far ahead that the game is essentially over at half-time. There is a scenario where it's an 8 to 10 point game at half-time in the All-Ireland final, and it's too much for Mayo to claw back.
Yeah, it could definitely happen. You do get memories of what happened in their last championship meeting, which was in 19, obviously, and Kerry race away by, I don't know what the early lead was, but it ends up being 10 points, and it was just, you just couldn't claw it back. For whatever reason, I think that you can put a lot of that down to them having home advantage on that afternoon and the game not taking place in Croke Park, which seems to be a venue which is now giving Mayo a couple of points, and it seems to be a venue that they actually enjoy playing in at the moment, and they've got a pretty good record there of late. That is definitely the danger for them. There's no question about it, and they're coming up against a team who have also nailed the third quarter in recent times, and that does seem to be the pivotal period of time in both codes at the moment, coming out after half time, and winning the third quarter is necessary in any big championship match in hurling or football at the moment, and Mayo are doing that, but Kerry are also doing that. That's the thing. And Dublin had been poor in the third quarter, in fairness, all year. Tyrone have been poor in a couple of third quarters, against Monaghan they were really poor in that second half in general. So those are the worries on that front, that Kerry do have that minutiae down. The thing on Clifford, maybe this is me throwing out the Kerry code a little bit too easily here, but I'd actually looking at it the complete other way. I think he's just such a talented footballer that the gap between games is just going to make him more hungry. And he hasn't been playing badly. He just hasn't been returning well, as you've said yourself. And I just think that he will be eyeing up that Tyrone game as an afternoon for him to make a bit of hay. I'm sure he'll be kind of talked out of that because that's not what makes a great team performer and that's not what makes a great team. But I think there will be a little bit of the selfish nature that has to be in every forward that will be ticking away over the last little while, saying I need a big performance on the scoreboard. So I'd look at it on the other way. But at the same time, you just look at that Mayo collection of backs and you're like, they can handle anyone at the moment. And not only can they handle them, they can do damage down the other end of the pitch to them. And I don't know, like I don't know what they did in the first half. I'm still yet to come across a piece of analysis that really does satisfy the turnaround. And maybe that will never come along because it was such a bizarre evening on Saturday. But whatever Mayo did, it just felt like we were looking at a completely different set of backs. Like if you had told anybody at half time that Lee Keegan would have been standing there with a man of the match award, and that maybe not O'Hora, but certainly Keegan would be standing there with a man of the match award at full time, like you would have got laughed at. Like it was just impossible to think that set of backs were going to turn it on, because why would they not turn it on in the first half? It almost seemed like the option was taken to not do what they did in the second half and the first half. So none of that makes sense, and that is what gives you concern about predicting this in any way and being forthright in your prediction in any way.
Is the shorter league season one of the reasons why we're seeing such big swings in matches in both codes? That actually teams are working stuff out on the fly in the middle of the actual occasion when they're up against another team of similar standard in a championship match? Is that a possibility? Because we've seen this in both hurling and football where massive leads are getting overturned on a fairly regular basis. So that would suggest that something is happening, and maybe it's just coincidence. It could easily be a coincidence, and we won't see it again for years to come. But the fact that there wasn't a full league campaign with all of the usual training and the same usual bonding sessions and weekends away, that actually managers are learning quite a lot on the hoof, and the best ones are capable of turning things around, and the best teams are capable of thinking their way out of problems.
And the water break probably contributes to that as well, does it? That they get an extra option to chat to their players, and gives them another opportunity to be clearer in what they want to do in terms of turning a game around. So, yeah, I'd say there's a couple of different factors there, and it's a trend that we've seen over the last little while. So yeah, like I mean, it is not unfair to anybody that Mayo are top of these power rankings this morning. I want that to be clear, and I'm sure that is clear to everybody, and I think that. Well,
let's talk about the Dubs, who are three. At the start of the year, if you'd said, irrespective of what happens, Dublin could be the third best team in the country, I don't think anybody would have believed you. But now, explain, how did you get there?
Well, I got there clearly because of some terrible refereeing on Saturday night. Isn't that right? Shall we defer to David Hickey here?
Today in the Examiner, 4 atrocious decisions swung the game. 4 atrocious decisions. Number 1, Rob Henley's 50 that was missed. It was allowed to be retaken because Mayo had 16 men in the field when it was taken. Dublin were penalised for a Mayo transgression. 2, the black card for Pascal. 3, the overcarrying free against our goalkeeper, Comerford. Disgrace, he says. And number 4, a lot of talk about John Small, but the hit on Brian Howard just before half time that put him out of the game was a cowardly attack from behind. He was finished after that. I must confess, I don't remember the hit on Howard. I don't remember who did it, and I don't remember how bad it was. But certainly Howard was diminished later in the game compared with the normal influence that he's able to exert on matches. But Howard's come off his very high level. Like John Small's recovery from injury has not been to the point where he's fully able to give the 70 minutes. So many of those players are, Fenton wasn't at his imperious I'm the greatest footballer of all time standard. Like it's death by a million different cuts for the Dubs. And I think the notion, it's in all the papers today because Paul Caffrey said it, that the COVID breach was something that kind of started this. I don't think that's like, look, maybe Desi was around less because of the ban, and that was his opportunity in that period of time to get his influence on the group. But like, I heard somebody posit the theory that Desi's a more relaxed manager than Jim Gavin would have been. But if you're coming into a dressing room with a bunch of players who collectively have over 100 All-Ireland medals, are you going to be able to come in and shout the odds and tell them what to do? throw your medals into the bin. I want you to win better. You're not. You're going to ask those players to assume more responsibility and to take full ownership of the team and to drive the standards. And like Tessie Farrell's record at the moment is as good as Jim Gavin's was after 2 seasons. There's obviously always going to be fallout when a great team and a dynasty ends the way it has ended. But it ended after extra time. And we got to extra time, through some fairly remarkable refereeing. If Mayo had been beaten, we would be talking about the fairly remarkable refereeing. But, like, what would have happened if Pascal scores or squares the ball?
A riot.
After the John Small incident.
A riot is what would have happened.
Game over. Game was over.
James Horan, Kung Fu Cantona style kick on Conor Lane is probably what would have happened. He actually put that into the back of the net. That is a very interesting sliding doors moment, and you kind of thought, Pascal, did he take him with the right boot? Am I right to say it kind of feels like it has to be?
Actually can't. So I'm so like, what happened there? What's going on?
Should he have fisted it over the bar?
Yes, and shouldn't James McCarthy have done the same? And did somebody hit the post in the first half with a free for the Dubs as well? Like, you start to think back on this, like, Dublin created a lot of chances and missed a lot of chances. While Mayo had their quota of bad wides, like really bad wides, the type that, the supporters of every team have seen at some stage and gone, oh, this is our wides disease is back. So I don't know. Like, are Dublin that far away? I'm very much in two minds about this. They could definitely, there could be a fire this off-season and they could decide that the whole thing gets blown up and some of them can go off and do other things because they've achieved everything that you're supposed to achieve when you start out in your career. Or they can come back and regroup and I don't know, those standards aren't going to disappear, are they?
I don't think so. Just to go back to the David Hickey thing, it is an extraordinary twist to say that Dublin were the ones screwed over and that they were the ones who lost as a result of 4 refereeing decisions, because I definitely have it down as the other way, and I think a lot of people probably do that.
I think the Culver thing, like, it didn't get talked about, but it's a big deal because it's definitely like, oh, I need to get them back into the game here. It didn't feel like he was over-carrying. It really didn't. And
the Henley thing?
The Henley thing, I think that, like, look, Mike Quirk reckons it was genius because he was telling Joe last night, you can see that Lane and Deegan are standing close to him, so he knows this isn't actually time to go. So he goes and he's like, okay, Grant, that's not where I need to go. I need to reorient here and take the shot. And fair enough. I think I buy that he knew that it wasn't the time to take the free and he took it anyway. Because he didn't seem in any way panicked about the fact that he wasn't going to get another opportunity, did he?
Well, no, he didn't, but
maybe he heard a whistle. It's hard to tell.
I think Henley's a pretty cool customer, to be honest. Anyway, I think he'd be exceptional at poker, Robbie Henley. But obviously, the importance of the Hickey quotes to Mayo people this morning will be the article that appeared last year with Fogarty as well in the Examiner, describing him as a tragic outfit. I'm just actually kind of rereading that this morning. He actually had a pop off the Cork hurlers as well in that article as well, saying that their performance against Tip was shocking and that they'll never win in All-Ireland with the way they approached the game. So could be 2 for the price of 1 in the space of 1 week. But it's, I don't know, maybe everybody in Dublin is with Hickey on this, and maybe they feel that the later the game went, the more important decisions went against Dublin because they were in the lead. But I don't know, I just think that there were far bigger decisions that went against Mayo, and they won in spite of terrible officiating, and they didn't win because of terrible officiating. And I think that's pretty cut and dry, to be honest with you, but they're interesting quotes all the same, and maybe it kind of speaks to a wider malaise regarding the refs from the Dublin perspective. I
have to congratulate Mayo. The turning point for me was when O'Shea was taken off, and I was impressed when that man Horan did that. I don't think O'Shea has ever played well in big games. When they took him off, they were more mobile up front, they had more options up front. He's like Messi was at Barcelona, and that everything has to go through him. They were the better for him going off. I don't think he should start in the final. I mean, Messi at Barcelona was pretty good, David. Like, he was the greatest player of all time. So that's a comparison that you're saying is bad. I don't think it's fair to say that Aidan O'Shea has never played well in the big game. I think Aidan O'Shea is a brilliant player, and I think that Mayo probably will start him in the final at this stage. And look, we've got 4 weeks to talk about that, so we'll get into it more as time goes on. Oisin Mullen's going to come back, right?
Yeah.
4 weeks is plenty of time for him to get back, is it?
I think so. I think
it wasn't a torn quad, or was it a tear? I don't know.
No, it didn't seem. And also as well, when Horan was talking to Tommy after the game, the only person he ruled out of the final was Cillian O'Connor. Obviously, you can add McLaughlin to that now as well with the job. But Oisin Mullen, I think that the information was that he could be back for the final even in its original date, let alone going back to September 11th.
Okay, so Dublin are third.
Yeah.
Where will Dublin be next season on? What do you think about, because the ages of the players keeps getting talked about. Conor McKillon's got a good piece today in the Herald and the Indo where he's talking about it's time for them to definitely get some of those under 21s through. They've not been great at winning underage. Over the past 2 years, Farrell's handed out championship debuts to Lahif, Aaron Byrne, Sean McMahon, Padder Cuffig-Byrne, Cian Murphy and Ryan Basquel, and none of them started the game against Mayo. So that new talent hasn't come through.
No, a couple of those players were really good underage players, is the thing. So it's not necessarily that. It seems to be the
They still have Kieran Archer to come in at some point.
Yeah, that's something that's been expected for a while. Obviously he's quite young. He would be the youngest of that group, wouldn't he? So it's probably next year.
Johnny Cooper, Mick Fitzsimons, Dean Rock and James McCarthy will be 32 by the time any serious football is played next year. Philly McMahon's 34 next month. I presume Kevin McManaman is thinking about coming back for next year. I don't know if he's going to finish. I don't know. Be interesting to see. Like, if all those players come back and nobody else comes back, right? So let's say Paul Mannion doesn't come back. Hickey mentions him as somebody who they should target.
Yeah,
I think everybody feels like there's Paul Mannion. I think is still only 28 and could definitely do a job. And if he'd been on the bench at the weekend to come off the bench for the last 5 minutes, would that have been something different? Definitely would have. If he'd started that game, would that have meant Costello was coming off the bench, and that changes things? I don't know. Are Dublin? Are we writing them off because they lost this game at the end of this year? I don't know.
I wouldn't be writing them off personally. I think that they'll still have a say in next year's championship. I think that starting 15 on Saturday was outstanding, and I still think that the strength of their starting 15 is almost it just adds to the whole mystique around the performance on Saturday, because their demise had happened long before the bench started to be run. So there was a lot of failings in that starting 15, and that are just inexplicable, because that 15 was so good. So once you have a starting team, of course you need a bench. You need a good 26 to be able to win an All-Ireland these days, and maybe Dublin don't have that to win next year's All-Ireland again, but they definitely have a strong enough starting team to challenge and to be a problem for every single team they play. The question is then what starts to happen when those players you did mention there do start to retire, the people who are the wrong side of 30. Does that then spell the end of this Dublin team? And I guess the only answer to that we can say, in fact, is we don't know. We just don't know how good any of these next generation of players are going to be, because, as I say, a couple of them were really good underage players and maybe just haven't made the translation to senior level quite as quickly as they would have liked, or maybe there's an element of their game that was more suited to the underage game and just wasn't good enough for senior level. So we don't know what's going to happen. The odds are in Dublin's favour. They have a massive population still, and they're very well resourced. So chances are that the machine is still running very, very well. It's just not producing maybe as well as they would like at the moment. So I can't see them doing, say, a Tyrone at the end of the 2000s, where they kind of go through the wilderness for a while and try and get things back together, but will always end up coming short. I think Dublin's base is around where they are at the moment, and their ceiling is not dominance, because I think that was a once-in-a-lifetime thing, but I think their ceiling is very much contending and being in All-Ireland finals every second year on average. Yeah,
well, that's what they should be with the population and the money and the investment that they have and the numbers that they have, that they should definitely be in All-Ireland semi-finals every single year, and every second year All-Ireland finals, and you win one out of every three. That's what they should harvest at this stage.
Yeah, who was it that made that prediction? Was it actually the Dublin County Board back in the early 2000s? I think was that actually their projection, or that was their hope, or maybe I'm actually getting that mixed up with one of the newer Cork County Board projections.
No, I think you're right. The Blue Wave
was one every three, and like I can easily see that happening. Like, it's just this idea of this golden generation and one of the best teams that we've ever seen I mean, maybe we are still living in a state of underappreciation, and that's the thing.
I think that potentially we didn't eulogise enough about the individuals who were there, certainly with each passing game as they leave, it's the Wes Hoolahan effect. It's like, wow, those players were really amazing. And I hope that Mayo team that went toe-to-toe with them gets a bit more credit as time goes on, as opposed to the stuff that has been said about them in the past. It's 8 o'clock this morning. OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. So you've no doubts. Kerry are number 2, Mayo are number 1, and the Dubs are now, for the first time in the history of the power rankings, as lowly as number 3. Are you in any way tempted to reconsider the standing of Wexford, Meath and Kildare? Or because Dublin are now only the 3rd best team in the country and they only got within 10 scores, it's like, no change.
Yeah, you've answered your question there. If anything, should Kildare be dropped below Roscommon and Derry? I think Meath did put up a good account for themselves. Like obviously Daniel Flynn's goal against Dublin was sensational, but there was a real frustration being there in Croke Park that day, looking at Dublin not looking very, very good at all, and Kildare not really looking like they believed, or not looking like they had the game plan to really challenge Dublin. But like, that is the thing. Like that is the really exciting thing about potentially next year, is that yes, the Mayo and Kerry and Tyrone will feel that they can beat Dublin every time they play them now, but the teams below them will feel that they can suck Dublin down as well, and that has to start in the Leinster Championship. And Meath for me would be the fixture next year where you'd be really looking at and thinking to yourself that something big could happen here, because it kind of needs to happen eventually for Meath, and the danger for them is that there is a bounce back pretty soon from the Dublin team.
Well, I think the big unanswered question is whether or not the Dubs are going to have the desire to keep going at the level that they've been at for the last stages. And no doubt other people will come through who will want to do that and will take this as their opportunity. But whether or not their very best players decide that the second act in their career after their first championship defeat ever is going to be, actually, we're going to go back and climb that mountain again and maintain or progress and get those standards back to where they were, even though there isn't the all-time great forwards that were there, or halfbacks that were there, or goalkeeper that was there. So it's going to be very, very interesting to watch over the next couple of years. And because Mayo are a real team, even though we expected Mayo to be away for a couple of years, given how many of their best players, their generational players, have been missing. And what are Mayo going to be like with Cillian O'Connor next year? Like, Jesus, it's going to be good. And hopefully fully fit Tyrone next season will actually be able to do something too. So I'd say Armagh are looking at what's going on and thinking, I'll have a bit of that. Monaghan must be thinking, Jesus, we're not that far away, lads, come on.
If only Monaghan had won that game against Tyrone, if only that begging Hail Mary had actually just dipped over Niall Morgan's crossbar. Well, I guess we would already know the identity of the finalists that would have been played on Sunday. But Monaghan have had a lot of near misses. They, like any team worth their salt and targets Division 1 now, if you feel that you belong in Division 1, you should feel that you can beat every team in Division 1 now, I think, because the standard of the best team in the land is not what it was 4 years ago.
And imagine if you were able to play them at home from time to time, as opposed to having to go to Croker. One last thing, and it's not 2020 hindsight. Said it at the time on this show. I think Kerry are going to regret not playing Cork in Croke Park when they had the opportunity to. Mayo have played 2 big games in Croker. They're totally acclimatised. The 3rd game this year in Croker in the All-Ireland final is not going to be a big deal for them. It's just an opportunity that, like, obviously that Kerry team, all those young lads, won All-Irelands at various age groups, been in All-Ireland finals at various age groups, know their way around Croker, have been there in the past, but why not take the advantage?
I'll be honest with you, I think, you could be right. And if you're talking about Cork regrets, I think that we'll know in a few weeks for sure how deep the regret is, but I think that if they beat Tyrone and Mayo beat them in the final, it'll actually just hammer home what happened last year against Cork, because I think that Dublin team could have been beaten last year, and Mayo maybe weren't at the level they are this year to be able to do it last year, but maybe Kerry could have done it last year. So I don't know, there's a lot of shoulda, coulda, wouldas in there.
All right, there was a good bit of heat on the we talked about Dublin and the foul play and the fact that this is actually just how the great teams manage games and have been, and they play on the edge and all that kind of stuff that we talked about yesterday. Massive backlash from both the Mayo and the Dublin fans yesterday. When's the homecoming parade for the Mayo team, says Ed on Twitter. I left straight after the game, so I didn't see the trophy presentation. I mean, given the anti-Dub Mayo loving, I assume they're now All-Ireland champions. Are they All-Ireland champions, Eoin?
Yes.
Embarrassing. Every winning team has an edge to them. Meath of the late 80s, Tyrone of the 2000s. They've gone down as great teams, but not Dublin, just thugs, says David. Is that not exactly the point we were making?
And I was just about to ask, is that pro or anti-Dublin?
He says we're embarrassing.
We're embarrassing, sorry, okay.
Yeah, we're embarrassing
Well,
because we
that
said
goes-
exactly what he's just said.
I can't look at myself in the mirror, David.
And the OTB anti-dub Mayo loving continues. Jesus, change the record. It's embarrassing, says Sive. So
Mayo really rub people up the wrong way, don't they? And I'll hold my hands up and say I have been one of the people on the receiving end of being rubbed up the wrong way in the past, but it seems that Dublin are kind of experiencing that at the moment.
Shawnee says there's an arrogance about Mayo and their supporters that thankfully doesn't exist in any other county.
Not true.
It exists in other counties.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That's what you're saying. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
that it's not true that they're...
No, everybody's arrogant. Everybody who has won a big game comes across as arrogant, and they puff the chest out and they celebrate. I mean, like Dublin fans are arrogant when they won 6 in a row. Kerry will be arrogant if they win this year. That is the way victory works.
This is worst case scenario for you though. If Tyrone somehow were managed to overturn the massive 7-1 odds that they face, and it'd be Tyrone against Mayo in an All-Ireland final, you would be like, is it possible that a giant rip in the earth's core can swallow the stadium and we never find out the result?
The beauty of a Tyrone versus Mayo final is that Kerry can't get beaten by Mayo in said final. So there will be a silver lining to all of that.
Tyrone Pat 1 says Dublin defeat was inevitable. If not this year, then next. Other counties were catching up with their fitness and conditioning. It's easy to look better than the opposition when your opposition feels as though they're wading through treacle. Thankfully, Mayo had the conditioning this time. Dublin's days on easy street are over. Al Wharton says Mayo did this to Dublin in the past and nearly beat them. If you attack Dublin, match them physically and are as relentless as they are in defence, they will fall apart. Were it not for 2 own goals, something I'd never seen before and something only Mayo could manage, they'd have beaten them in 2016. When you think about the 2 own goals, I mean, I would say that Mayo need to just calm everything down a bit in terms of the 4 weeks that they're going to have to just shake the bottle. Every day the bottle's going to be shaken a little bit more until it's ready to explode. But remember that you've had 2 own goals in an All-Ireland final. You've had sendings off after a mass brawl where your best player got picked out and the opposition's halfback. There's been like various different ways over the years in which the made-up curse has manifested itself and made itself manifest. Just picture the worst and be pleasantly surprised if the best happens.
Like it's interesting that you mentioned 96 there. Is this Mayo's best pre-match opportunity of winning an All-Ireland since 96?
Let's wait and see who they're playing. So if Kerry do put in a 7-1 on performance against Tyrone, then they'll win by 10 to 12 points, right? That's what that means, essentially.
So they will be favourites for the All-Ireland. Like that's the point.
They're massive favourites for the All-Ireland, even still. Like,
see, that's the point.
It's not a 50-50 game. Mayo are 11-8.
Like Andy Moran has made that point that if you take any of those games individually, Mayo have never been favourites for the All-Ireland. Like if you go back through all of those, I'm not sure if they were for Cork in '89 but they definitely felt that.
I think so. That Cork team had been coming for.
But it definitely felt that maybe Meath in '96 was a team that Mayo would have fancied. They'd like beaten Kerry in the semi-final, and of course Meath had pedigree of having recent All-Ireland winners in that team. But it kind of felt that was the one you'd have above all the other ones as the opportunity on paper before the game for them to win. And I wonder if this year's one could be something similar. That
Mayo 96 team are all on a cycle today raising money for the cancer research, the oncology unit in Mayo, and I can only imagine the crack that they are having this week after what happened at the weekend. And we were trying to speak to someone this morning. They were like, I am hanging out with my buddies from 1996 and we are getting on the road and we're having a road trip and we're raising money for cancer and there might be some fun being had. And I'd say maybe later on today there'll be some videos emerging. We should ask DB to record everything and see what happens. So anyway, 6 in a row. The lads need a break. Come back next year and do it all again, says DC. It's possible. I mean, you would not put it beyond that great team and those great players that they can come back from this. But at the same time, something has been broken. The sense that they're inevitably going to win every match, that's gone. and you don't get that back. Great teams, no matter what they do now, that's not coming back for this group of players. They're going to have to forge something new themselves. So very interesting to see what that second act is like. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. If you want to get in touch with us this morning, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Very busy show between now and 10. We're going to hear from Mick Bohan, Phil Healy and Graham Hunter back in a moment with the back pages.
On OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Dad Pod.
This is a video thing as well.
Does it have a name?
Podcast.
Midlife crisis.
Paddy Daddy.
Midlife crisis.
Dadcast.
That's not bad, actually. Yeah.
There was definitely a period of a couple of months where meltdowns were becoming more frequent, and now when she's outside and she's sort of playing with the neighbours' kids, like if she doesn't get her own way, the meltdown is quite extreme. So maybe that's the terrible twos, but I think maybe we've escaped the worst of it.
Well, I think the terrible twos is a bit of a misnomer because it goes into the 3s and 4s.
Dadcast, Tuesdays from 3 p.m. on OTB Sports Radio. Tune in on the OTB Sports app.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Automower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, if you want to get in touch with us this morning, we'd love to hear from you. You can leave a comment on the YouTube stream, or you can get us on WhatsApp 0879 180 180. Let's bring you through the newspapers very quickly, and we'll start with OTBSports.com. It's the least we deserve. Emma Duggan on Meath reaping awards after a gritty comeback performance. James McCarthy visibly got old in Mayor defeat, says Darragh Kinage on last night's show. Reduced social distancing and more television cameras for Rovers playoff. Both legs of the playoffs on TV1 and RTN1 on Virgin. And Harry Kane right to mess about if Levy broke promise, says Pat Nevin. It's always going to be a case of he said, she said, isn't it? You read this piece first. Maybe you've got a quick few thoughts on it, Eoin. Kevin McStay, Small's hit released the skeleton in the cupboard is the piece today in the Irish Times. Only John Small knows his intention. It would be wrong to assert he deliberately set out to injure the man. It was a split-second decision. But then all sports are composed of split-second incidents. You can be sure he decided, I'm going to give this everything. All the eulogising down the years of the hard man and the manliness led to this moment when a young man has been seriously hurt, his face substantially damaged and broken by a challenge which is supposed to be a shoulder-to-shoulder. A short time after McLaughlin was stretchered off, Small routinely decked O'Donoghue off the ball near the Davin stand end line. It was a nasty, needless punch. O'Donoghue was incensed. The moment went unpunished. It drew the picture of a guy slightly out of control and certainly not wrestling with any moral qualms about what had happened earlier. By then, a kind of wildness had crept into the Dublin mindset. They went out swinging. There was something shocking about it.
Yeah, he's gone in hard on Small there, hasn't he? It's I think that has been the general consensus, that obviously he doesn't mean to injure McLaughlin in the initial incident that he's referring to there, but he ended up doing it, and it should have been a red card as a result. Maybe going and questioning character is a step too far. I don't think he's really doing that. I think maybe he's just talking about him in the context of the game, that maybe the emotion was getting to him, and maybe he was losing a bit of control as the game went on. Like McStay obviously at the time didn't think it was a free, or didn't think it was a card, certainly, and on Sunday night show on the Sunday game then kind of said that he called it wrong, and once he got a few more replays he changed his mind, which is fair enough, I guess.
Yeah, it is. It just feels like it's a little bit of I don't know. So Paul Galvin had the line that he went to hurt but not to injure, and that's the whole point of those tackles. It was tackled, mistimed, and that therefore has the impact that it causes. I don't know. I don't think is the eulogising about the manliness and the hard man stuff. Does that cause that? Is that what precipitates this?
No, I like how would that precipitate what Dublin are doing? I don't think that's.
I think he's talking specifically about John Small, to be honest. And I don't know. Maybe he's right. He says it's releasing a skeleton in the cupboard, essentially, that this type of stuff is is bullshit. That like those tackles are bullshit, and maybe that's true. Maybe there is a tolerance for head-high tackles and clotheslines. Certainly, there seem to be clotheslines, yellow card, tackles to the head, yellow card, tackles to the neck, yellow card. Like all other sports in the world, football is considering banning heading the ball because of brain injuries, and we're like, yeah, go on, yellow cards. Do you know?
Yeah, well, I don't think anyone's saying go on after seeing that on Saturday night. But you're obviously talking shoulder to shoulder. You're talking like the bigger the hit, the better. And because that's tolerated within the rules, I guess it's kind of like a moment that people tend to celebrate on the pitch. So yeah, I guess maybe there is. It's a skill. Shouldering somebody is a skill of the game, and it's a highly physical one at that. And people who manage to execute it perfectly are incredibly good at what they do. But it comes with a risk, and John Small obviously negotiated that risk. And there's always a chance that when you're doing it to a player who's even in kind of like a half bent position or whatever like that, you're going to cause a little bit of damage. Like there's a reason why it's an automatic free, for example, if somebody's going down on the ball and you can't shoulder them and they're going down on the ball because they're in kind of a vulnerable enough position. So I don't know. I'm kind of a little bit split on it. I'm not sure that that Dublin necessarily tapped into the whole sort of mystique of being an unbelievably physical team and beating a team up necessarily. I just think that in every facet of their game, maybe they wanted to go for the most aggressive approach, whether that's racking up a big score or trying to put in a big hit. That's probably what the byproduct was.
All right. Sugar cane is the back page headline on the Star, which means that the Spurs players will be happy to welcome Harry Kane back. And then there's Kane hero and Kane, and there's loads of those headlines, and it's essentially that Romelu Lukaku is back and available for selection, and the rest of it is Paul Caffrey saying that he thought that the COVID fiasco would have had an impact given how many players were teachers or on the front line. So they're the back page headlines for you this morning. Let's bring you this. Eoin has been speaking with Irish Olympian Phil Healy. We've still got Mick Bohan, Graham Hunter and much more to come, but enjoy.
I am delighted to say we are joined by Irish Olympian Phil Healy, who was on hand today to announce that Girls Play 2, Book 2, More Inspiring Stories of Irish Sportswomen, is exclusively available in Lidl stores nationwide for only $12.99 until the 5th of September. So it's just in time to inspire children as they prepare to go back to school. Phil, how are you getting on?
I'm all good. Thanks a million for having me on.
I presume this has been a few months, whether it's the reaction to your homecoming, whether it's something like this in Girls Play 2, Book 2, that I guess allows you to realise how much of an inspiration you've become to so many people over the last few weeks even.
100%, and coming home last week to see the support, people lining the streets when I arrived back home in Ballineen was just crazy. And I think it was a bit surreal as well, because obviously you're out in Tokyo and the fans aren't there, but I think the support was magnified with the lack of fans and having that whole nation behind you, and it was definitely rippled through Team Ireland. We could really feel that support from everybody back home. And then, of course, today to be here for the launch of of Jackie's book, and honoured to be a part of the book and to be asked to share my story as well. It's just unreal.
Can I ask, what was the main thing motivating you in each event? You're obviously out there quite a bit, the first Irish woman to compete in 3 different events on the track. Each time you go out there, what is the main thing that was driving you on?
Yeah, so first up we had the relay, and obviously being a part of a team is totally different to being just going out there and performing individually. But in end of the day, team or individual, you have to go out there and perform individually for us collectively to perform as a team. So it was great to have the first occasion as a team, to be there together, going through the call rooms, all of that you're not on your own. So that was super to share with the other guys, and just to qualify for that Olympic final was crazy. And to see the excitement of everybody within the team, outside the team, everybody within Team Ireland, it was just crazy. And to go out and perform again the day later in an Olympic final before I turned the focus into an individual campaign. It was a really quick turnaround. But that's part of it. And like, yes, I was disappointed with the performance in the 200 because I knew that I was in PB shape coming in, but I just fell short, just 500ths of a second off qualifying for an Olympic semi-final. But then I had to turn that disappointment and channel it towards the 400, and I certainly performed beyond my expectations. Again, so close to qualifying for the semi, but it definitely gives me that confidence knowing that I have the potential to be there in those Olympic semi-finals and take it on into next year.
Is that half the battle, Phil, almost finding that confidence and feeling that you do belong in that company?
I definitely think so, because sometimes like you can be in the best shape ever, but there's always going to be those little voices just before you go onto the track and different things like that. So you do have to manage those and shut those voices out. But yeah, when you go out there and you perform under those lights, under that pressure, that's the confidence that every athlete takes from, and knowing that you can perform against the best in the world. And like, it has been an unbelievable year for me, coming fourth at European Indoors back in March, qualifying at World Relays for the Olympics, and then competing in 3 events at the Olympic Games. It's the pinnacle of every athlete's career. And even I look at the European Indoors, being that close to a medal definitely gives me that hunger to step it up that extra level again and like push things on further, and knowing that I can compete with the best in the world out there.
In the 4x400, was it as crazy competing in it as it looked on TV? There was a manic nature to both the semi-final and the final.
Yeah, totally, and it really is a great event with the dynamic between the men and the women and combining both. So it definitely gives great entertainment for people watching. And like, you could see that, I think it was Nigeria had a different setup. They put a man on a leg where we had females, and other countries had females. So it definitely adds great excitement. But it's an unreal event to have at an Olympics and on the world stage, and it gave Ireland the opportunity to qualify for an Olympic Games. That was 6 people involved within the team. We had 2 great subs. We had 4 that ran on the day. Everyone plays a massive part. And at the end of the day, they are now Olympians. They're Olympic finalists. So it gave a massive opportunity to qualify as part of the team, and definitely will drive them on further, and me further, to qualify individually again in future.
It really spoke to a level of your own confidence as well, that you were happy enough to run that before your individual events, because I guess it would have been a defeatist attitude to say, oh, it might hold me back for the 200. Like, as you say, these games don't come along too often. We've had to wait 5 years for this one. So I presume there's absolutely zero regrets about going for every available event.
No, and like, I knew coming into the championships, as I said, that I was in PB shape over 200 and 400. For me, looking at it realistically, an Olympic final, the best opportunity to get to an Olympic final was a part of the relay. So that was always going to be our focus, and like, we achieved that, and like, I can call myself an Olympic finalist. That can never be taken away from me, and being a part of that team who made history on the day by qualifying for the final, by shattering the national record, taking 4 seconds off the national record. But then of course you move towards the individual, and I gave everything to the team and in my performance. And there was that initial disappointment where you just fall short. And I suppose you go out and every day you're training to perform individually, but that individual aspect pays off within the relay as well, because if you don't perform individually, you're letting the team down. And as I said, you need the collective individual performances to make that team performance overall.
As a whole, from a team perspective and an Athletics Ireland perspective, what was the biggest takeaway, do you think, from the Tokyo Games?
I think it was great to be a part of the Olympics and Team Ireland, especially with the athletics. And even if you look at the postponement, if the games went ahead in 2020, Ireland wouldn't have had a mixed relay there, because we didn't have the opportunity to qualify in 2019. So that's 5 others that wouldn't be Olympians. That's everybody that wouldn't be an Olympic finalist, a part of that team. And even for myself individually in 2020, I was only qualified in the 200. So that extra year gave me the opportunity to qualify in the 400 as well as the mixed relay. But not only me, there were so many other athletes, a part of the athletics team that qualified in 2021 that wouldn't have qualified in 2020. So there was a great boost overall. It was such a big team. There was a great environment within the athletics team, and just seeing, obviously people were disappointed with their performances, but looking back they can take so much from it. And it was great to see the likes of Andrew Coskren, who made the semi-final, and like he was absolutely buzzing, and everyone feeds off that buzz. Ailish Flanagan, who like did a massive PB, great performance, and like it's just great to see the excitement in so many people and to share that as a close athletics team.
And that's the thing, there were so many people who came away from the games buzzing, so many people who came away from the games disappointed, and both of those things can be a positive experience in the long run. So how do you ensure, or what needs to be done over the next 3 years to ensure that those either lessons are learned or that things are built on in a positive manner over the next 3 years?
Yeah, and I think everybody will reflect when they go away from the Olympic Games what they can improve on, what can be changed, what was great about the year. And it's not just the Olympics, it's the whole year and what they look at collectively and where the improvements can be made. So there's massive confidence boosts, there's massive positives to take away, even if you didn't perform to what you felt could have been a different level. You will look back knowing what you have done and what you have achieved, and getting to the Olympics is an achievement in itself, and that can never be taken away from you. So it will give athletes a lot of hunger and a boost going forward into the next few years. Paris is only around the corner. But between now and Paris, we have so many international competitions. Like next year alone, we have World Indoors, European Outdoors, World Outdoors. So that is a really busy year before we go on into 2023, which will have the exact same. So there's so much to look forward to between now and then, and so many things to keep the athletes focused and their support networks around them.
I'm not sure if you been thinking kind of like bigger picture it all over the last little while, but even from rubbing shoulders with some athletes from different countries that have been making the podium, I guess, over the last few weeks, did you get a sense that maybe that there's anything that Ireland can do better or can resource better to I guess, ensure better performances over the next little while? Like from your own perspective, do you feel that you've got everything you need in order to get the best out of yourself on a consistent basis?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's a credit to my support network where I'm based in Waterford. But if I even look at my coach, Sheahan, like he is a volunteer coach. And I think people look on and think that all the coaches that were getting athletes to Olympic level that's their job. And it's not, their volunteer coaches. They give up their time. They give 100% commitment and sacrifice, dedication. And that's what's getting our athletes the success. It's different amongst different sports. But without these coaches, the athletes wouldn't be getting the success. And maybe in 10, 15 years' time, coaches may not be as willing to give their time up so willingly, voluntarily. So maybe that investment is needed. And there is a lot of talks around the investment that's needed for the coaches to perform, because at the end of the day, if we want to do well, the coach is giving the athlete the success. So I think something needs to be put in place to support the coaches, and just even like in terms of basic expense, like you travel all around the world and it's coming out of your own pocket. So that's why I'm very lucky. Like I am on international funding, so I get 12,000 a year, but 12,000 a year is very little in terms of what it takes to perform at the highest level. And because you put so much dedication and time into it, for me, it's not possible to work full-time either, or even part-time, because I train 6 days a week. So much time is put into training and the recovery process as well. So I am very lucky to have a great support network around me, like sponsors. I'm a part of the sports scholarship in WIT, and all of that support really has helped me take away that financial stress, take away that added extra stress, which allows me to perform, and knowing that I have that full support around me makes a massive difference.
It's really interesting what you mentioned about Sheahan there, because that's one of the things that's almost becoming a little bit of a trend at some of these championships, is that there are so many great Irish coaches that aren't actually coaching Irish athletes, that they're getting paid better by going abroad. It's not just athletics, it's obviously in boxing as well with Billy Walsh at the moment. But what sort of difference would that make to the Irish setup if someone like Shane McCormack was funded a little bit better and was able to do it full time? Yeah,
that would make a massive difference, because obviously when Shane went to Tokyo, he had to take a sabbatical from work. So he has a full-time job on the side, he has his family, and he's making all these sacrifices, and like, you're not paid to do it, and the expense like going to other outside of Tokyo, the expense going to other international competitions is out of your own pocket. So like it is very hard on coaches, and as I said, people may not be willing to do it because of that financial stress in years to come. But we are very lucky in athletics that we have so many volunteer coaches who are willing to give their time so well for the success of so many athletes and teams, and without those stalwarts in the sport wouldn't be where they are, and that goes from the grassroots level right up to the elite level.
Have you watched any of the races back over the last little while?
Yeah, so I watched the relay back, and I watched the 400 back as well. But overall, like, there was great excitement just to see how well the relay team performed together, and I was really happy with the 400 meter run as well, and that just gives me a massive boost going on from here. What are you a harsh viewer of your own races, or how does it go for you? Yeah, definitely, and I certainly can't watch the interviews back either. But yeah, I was disappointed with the 200. But I know why I was disappointed, and it wasn't as if I was like fully fresh, and that was my performance on the day. Like, I even look back to 2019 in Doha, where I ran 23.5, and that was me being 100% fresh, but just things weren't clicking at that point. But I went out there, I ran 23.21. It was a season's best on the day. I fell slightly short, but I know walking off that track, yes, it was so close, but I know what's in me to go out and perform being fully fresh. It's amazing having that thing right in front of you as well, that you know exactly the target for 3 years' time. As you say, there are tons of big events before then, but I guess having gone through that experience, it's a way more tangible thing now. 100%, and like an Olympic Games is the pinnacle of every athlete's career, and getting there, obviously it was a very different Olympic Games to previous, but this was my first game, so I knew no different. So it was it's definitely a great stepping stone, and end of the day, I am an Olympian, I am an Olympic finalist. Those both things can never be taken away from me. So it is very exciting that I have achieved this, and it's a credit to all those, like my training group, Sheahan, my coach, that have got me to this point, and all the people that are supporting me. So it's not just me out there on the day. Yes, I'm the one running, but there's so many people that play a part in every athlete's journey to getting to that level. So what was the homecoming in Cork like in the end? I saw you were in a convertible red Opel, which looked amazing. Yeah, so it was a bit mad because I certainly wasn't expecting anything, and I was sitting in Doha airport on our layover on the way back, and I saw I was tagged on a thing on Facebook that I would be arriving at a certain time, and I was like, oh my God, this is actually happening. So yeah, when we rocked up to the village, they put me into a convertible, and just to see the lines of people that were out, children dressed in green, and like everybody with flags and posters, it was just great, and everybody was so excited. And it really brought a great buzz and the community together. So it was so great to see. And on the way, I stopped off in Bandon and saw so many people from Bandon Athletic Club, and that's where everything kicked off for me. So it was great to see all those familiar faces and the support that was there for me. How much do you have to try and soak in those moments when it happens? Because like, it is unbelievably special, Phil, and not getting any of that in Tokyo, it kind of makes the homecoming even more special, because it is the first time you're interacting with fans and people who've been watching you, you know? 100%, and especially because I haven't been home in so long, it was feel like I really made that arrival home in style. But yeah, no, it is crazy, and you have to soak it up, because in sport, as any sports person knows, there is as many bad days, sometimes if not more than the good days, and anything can happen at any point. So you really have to relish those moments and savor them and use them for the future, because I think every athlete needs to celebrate the good times and not just brush them away, because as athletes, we're very much like moving on very quickly. Like, we've done one and we're on to the next straight away, but you really have to savor them and relish those moments, because they don't come around easily. That's for sure. So speaking of that, what is next up for you then? What are you looking to next, and how's the rest of the calendar shaping up for you? Yeah, so I have 2 more races left, and they're all in the space of a week, and then I will have 3 weeks off before we kick off back into winter training again. So the hard work commences again, and like, it is mad because we do train 11 months of the year. We have 3 weeks off in the year, and the whole thing starts again. So it does take so much sacrifice and dedication, but for me, it's my job and that's what I enjoy doing, and I'm grateful for all the support. And we have a very big year ahead with everything geared towards World Indoor Championships and build off the European Indoor Championships from this year.
Good stuff. Well, Phil, congratulations on the last few weeks. It was an incredible few days, actually, the way it was all compressed in terms of your schedule over in Tokyo. I should mention again that Phil Healy's with us because she was on hand today to announce that Girls Play 2, Book 2, More Inspiring Stories of Irish Sportswomen is now exclusively available in Lidl stores nationwide for only $12.99. And that is until the 5th of September. So it's in time to inspire children as they prepare to go back to school. Irish Olympian Phil Healy, thanks a million.
Thanks a million, Eoin.
Off the ball.
Right, it's 8:35 this morning. If you want to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good mornings. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We're going to talk with Graham Hunter a little bit later on about the now officially more than €1 billion debt that Barcelona are in, the start of the new Spanish League season, where the big three officially are at the moment, and how life post Messi is going to look for Ronald Koeman's team. That's all coming a little bit later on. We'll also play the first clip from the Paddy and Andy podcast. You need to get the OTB Sports app today, and you need to get on there and subscribe to the podcast stream and turn on your notifications, and you'll be the first people in the country who are able to get access to that before it goes live everywhere tomorrow in 24 hours time. But there is an exclusive 24-hour window on the OTB Sports app if you want to hear the Paddy and Andy pod. Now, Bon Secours Hospital Dublin is the official medical partner of the Dublin senior ladies football team, contributing to the funding of the team's medical staff. The players will also have rapid access to diagnostic and specialist care from the hospital's 140 medical and surgical consultants. For further information, you can check out bonsecours.ie/Dublin. I'm delighted to say, to help launch this initiative, Mick Bohan is with us this morning. Mick, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm very good. Good morning to you.
Does getting ready for an All-Ireland final get different year on year? What's your own personal understanding of how the next couple of weeks are going to go, and is that coloured by what you've been through over the last few years?
I suppose there's a lot in that. Everybody starts off on a learning curve where everyone has a first time for this, and obviously that's exciting, and you make mistakes and you learn from those. So definitely having had the opportunity to prepare teams for an All-Ireland final is helpful. But I have to say it's a fabulous time of year, and everybody wakes up with spring in their step and looks forward to the challenge and come and train. And there's obviously a fabulous atmosphere around the camps. So it's a really exciting time of year.
When do the nerves kick in?
I suppose it's a little bit of trepidation right from the start, because even this year with a new challenge with Meath, there's a new pairing, so we're unfamiliar with them. So immediately your antennae is risen. So as regards the nerves themselves, the week of it, you definitely feel a rise in that kind of. It's not even tension, it's kind of, it's a mix between, I suppose, nervous energy and excitement. But that's what sharpens the axe.
Well, it's what it means to feel alive, right? Isn't that? I always feel like it's it must be the best part, is the anticipation in some respects. Obviously, eventually when you get over the line, the winning, there's a sense of elation and relief and all that kind of stuff. But the best part is actually where you don't know what's going to happen and you're excited by the challenge.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's one of the reasons we probably do it. I only ever once did a bungee jump off a bridge, and the 45 minutes prior to it had to have been the worst 45 minutes wait in my life, and then the jump itself is excitement, and football's not unlike that. Like that, you spend all those hours getting ready for something and concerns and everything, and then the minute the ball is thrown in, you're at it and you're doing probably what you're comfortable at.
Would you recommend a bungee jump?
My biggest fear at the time was were my joints going to stay together. So no, I did it in France, and no, it's not something I do again, but delighted I did it.
That's interesting. So it wasn't something you did when you were much younger or something. This was obviously a very recent thing you did.
It wasn't that recent, no. But it's very much in the memory bank still.
Did you go to Croke Park on Sunday as well, Mick, or were you happy enough to watch it on TV?
A couple of the management team went in, but I watched it at home. I had a little bit of a shift to put in with the kids. I'd missed a fair amount of time with them during the week. So, and equally, the demand obviously for the under-20s final was significant. So all those things I hadn't, in my own preparations, I hadn't even considered looking for a ticket for the game.
When does opposition analysis begin, or how does that work for you?
Well, this year it's completely different because, as I said, you know, had the pairing been Cork, we obviously would be very familiar with them, and we had quite an amount of work done on them over the years, and obviously there's always new information to gather. But this time it's completely different. Like genuinely, we would have watched Meath and watched their growth, and even though it wasn't a massive surprise for us that they ended up winning that game, at the end of the day, we had no reason to have work done on them prior to this because we haven't played them. I'm not quite sure any of this group have played them since 2016. So that's an amount of time, and obviously a huge amount of changes in their ranks still, or since that time, and they've been quite successful underage. So preparation started on Sunday, the minute the whistle blew, and I'm not quite sure our stats team were delighted because that meant a whole new amount of work for them. But there's an excitement that comes with that because, you know, familiarity, and sometimes the little bit of excitement does start to dissipate. So even for crowds, so a complete new pairing and a Leinster pairing for Leinster final or for the All-Ireland final is quite exciting, I think.
How familiar are you with the Meath surge over the last few years and the work that's gone in that county?
Yeah, we've played them. We played them in challenge games, and we saw what was happening. You could see that they were building. Now, did we see that they were going to build this fast? I'm not quite sure we did, but they are, and you know, they're obviously now the main opponents for us, and we have to be very wary because ultimately what they did in the last 10 minutes of that game against a battle-hardened Cork team was quite significant. And, you know, you can say it was fortuitous, you can say that Cork collapsed, but at the end of the day, Meath had to put the foot on their throat in order to put them under that type of pressure. And I suppose there's a certain amount of playing with abandon because when they have a lot of players who are very young, and when you come at that stage of your career, you really don't come with the baggage of older players, like older players who've been down that road, know the tripwires, and they, you know, there's massive concerns, and they think about things or worry themselves with things that they probably don't need to do, but that comes with age, you know, that exuberance of youth where everything is in front of you and nothing's really a problem. That gives an energy, and it's, from our point of view, it's obviously dangerous.
Can I ask a more general question rather than the specifics of what Meath have done? It's about the speed with which a county can reorganise and get to the level that Meath have done. It suggests that with proper investment around the country, that actually the speed with which women's Gaelic football could progress, it's kind of lightning speed. That opportunity is right there for all the other counties who should be looking at Meath as an inspiration, and the organisation itself, and then beyond that, kind of what the rest of the country and how we allocate funding to women's Gaelic football, just how quickly the sport could tip over into something even bigger than it already is.
Isn't that a really good point? Because so many times, you know, whatever rung of the ladder you're on, you're looking up, you wonder, can you ever get to that stage? But with good organisation, good coaching, good structures, look what can take place, because Meath have not contested at this level. And they literally have turned the thing over. And can you just imagine the energy that anybody involved in women's football in their county is getting at the moment to see the progress that they've made? And that's right down the ranks. If you're involved with your 14s or minors or whatever, and you're looking up saying that this is achievable, that they're now competing in the biggest day of all. in the sport and in a very, very short time frame. But yeah, that energises people. But I would have said that for years in clubs, no matter where I go, giving coaching courses or otherwise, that this thing is achievable. Like, I mean, I go back to the lads, 2011 with our men's team, 15 years without having been successful. And, obviously their run came to an end the weekend, but ultimately look at what they did during that period of time, and nobody foresaw that coming.
You've obviously seen the evolution in women's Gaelic football over the last decade and a half. How much more is there still to go? I suppose that's the other side of that question that I'm asking.
Yeah, I think it's to go there's quite a significant breach and still where the game can actually go. There's still an element of girls teams are treated and trained differently. I certainly have seen it at underage, whereby if a lads team were coming through the ranks and they had inferior skill levels or they weren't using both sides of their body, it would be addressed. Tends not to be with young girls that they're able to kick it, it'll do, that approach, which drives me insane. And then you see good people who are involved and you see rapid improvements because girls are good listeners and they're actually very good at giving feedback back, while lads may not be as quick to do that. So the learnings I've seen take place quicker. Now, why do they take place quicker? Because there's a bigger chasm of growth available to them. So I've certainly seen in the 5 years that we've been involved in this group that the growth has been significant from where they started out. And there's a real pleasure in that in coaching. While you might not see the huge gains in a fella's team as quickly, because there may not be those gains to achieve. And I suppose that's probably Meath's energy, Bunny, at the moment, that they've seen that so quickly. So everybody involved in that camp is coming with a huge energy.
Hopefully it's an inspiration for all the other counties out there, or a kick in the ass, depending on which they need, and it can be both. That's it's very acceptable for it to be both as well. Can I talk to you about some of the comments in the aftermath of the game? You were obviously quite exercised about stuff that had been said pre-match. The word cynical was something that had obviously pissed you off enough to the point where you brought it up unprompted in the aftermath of the Mayo game. What was it that rang that bell for you, that annoyed you to the point where actually, I'm going to address this now when I have the opportunity to?
So the first thing is that I wasn't annoyed, but I was standing up for our group. And annoyed is kind of impromptu reaction to something. I was very aware of what I was going to say if I got the opportunity post-match, because over the last couple of weeks, we've been described after the Donegal game as physical and calculated fouling. Then obviously coming into the Mayo game, we were described as a team who were cynical. And I was looking around, knowing what's going on in the group, knowing the coaching that's going on in the background, going, where are these guys going and what are they at? Why would you do that to a group who have genuinely gone off after trying to improve the standard of the game and try to play the game at the highest possible level that they can during their time? And that's allowed. That's one of the challenges that we've set ourselves. And after year one, and I've stated this many times, and oftentimes when you're fully honest, people nearly don't believe that you're telling the truth. But we haven't spoken about trying to win All-Irelands. We haven't spoken about trying to win medals or cups. We continuously speak about trying to play the game at the highest possible level we can. So when somebody throws terms at it that are incorrect, I obviously had to address it, because very soon what happens is that becomes a given. That's what Dublin are, that's what they do, as opposed to actually looking at the game and saying, what actually are they doing? And I made the point, and I had spoken to TG Carr prior to the weekend, because some of the stuff they had presented prior to the Donegal game was on the contact that was now taking place in the women's game. And physicality was the word that was being used with this. And I said to them, but it's not. Physicality is the incorrect language. You're using the wrong language. That's complete commitment for the ball. That's not physicality. Sinead Ahern is 5'3", and I don't know what she weighs in at, but she's a small stature. She's not a physical player. Caoimhe O'Connor is the same, but their commitment to win the ball is unwavering. That's a completely different description. And cynical, we play the game at a really high intensity, which is, and we've come with this onus on us for the last number of years that there's a responsibility. We always haven't stood up to it, but there's a responsibility on us to entertain when we play the game. And I would have huge mass on that as a coach, not just trying to win matches, but the way we play and the way we represent the game. But that equally means in the game, in a contact sport, and in the rule of ladies football states there can be no deliberate contact. But if you and I compete for a ball and contact is made, that doesn't mean I'm fouling you. It means there's contact because I competed to win the ball. And if I have done more conditioning work than you have and happen to be stronger and win that contest, that doesn't mean I'm physically bullying you or otherwise. It means I've done more work than you and I've won the contest. And that's all I was trying to point out. And I equally feel that the rules at this stage, because the game has moved on, you asked me the question, was there more to go? And I see that there's, huge opportunities for this to grow. And it doesn't. I understand that the Ladies Association don't want the rules the same as the men's game. I can fully understand that. But no contact in a game of this magnitude with the same number of players and the same parameters of the pitch as a men's game. So when they go to a ball and they're just about to make contact, they have to stop. That's impossible. So then when there's contact, whose free is it? Is it because we made contact and you end up on the ground, now it's a free to you? Because that's what's happening in the game at the moment. And if you look at the tackle, if a girl steps across another, and you've seen at the moment a lot of players hitting the deck, and it's nearly become, because everybody, including myself, you have to play with the rules to the best of your ability, and you're obviously trying to play as close to the line as you can. But if you have a situation where people are now throwing themselves to the ground because contact is made and the referee is given a free for that, well then that encourages that type of behaviour. So that's why I had gone after the whole concept that the rules of the game aren't fit for purpose at the moment and they need to be revisited. But you don't always have to see that as a negative. That doesn't mean that the game isn't a good game. It's like in rugby, the game evolved and we had to change it because the development of the players was so significant and the bulk that they were carrying, they had to bring in rules to change the game. Or in basketball, when it became monotonous with the ball going back to the court, so they brought in a time frame in which you had to shoot. So that doesn't mean the sport is wrong. It just means the governing body of the sport has to have a look at it and say, okay, we need a couple of alterations here to make the game better. The girls have become better developed. They're playing the game faster. There's a higher intensity. So we need to come up with something that's going to benefit the sport and have a look at the rulings that'll help the game develop, and that there's a better understanding, because at the moment, neither the referees or the coaches or the players understand the rules. And we would have had it from the LGFA last week, putting up, coaching on the tackle, and obviously, deliberately put up on the websites because of the comments that were made around it. But as I said to a friend of mine during the week, it was equivalent to putting Samba from The Lion King into the jungle. It's totally not equipping you for the arena. A near hand tackle when somebody's coming at you 100 miles an hour, sure, it doesn't make sense.
We should embrace change, not be afraid of it.
That is the whole point in this. Change doesn't have to be bad. And nor does it mean that somebody got it wrong. It just means that things have evolved.
Mick, good stuff. It's always great to talk to you. Best of luck with the next couple of weeks, whatever happens. And cheers for talking to us this morning.
Thanks,
Mick Bohan, always thoughtful there, and good to hear from the manager of the Dublin women's senior football team, helping to launch the news that Bon Secours Hospital Dublin is now the official medical partner of the Dublin senior ladies football team. Check out bonsecours.ie/Dublin if you've got an opinion on anything you've heard us talk about this morning then you can get in touch. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or you can also leave a comment on the YouTube channel. It is 8:54 this morning. We're going to talk about the situation in Barcelona in just a moment. Yeah, actually, I can say I'm delighted that Graham Hunter is with us for the first time in a while. Graham, how are you?
Yeah, grand, yeah. Enjoying football being back.
I don't think we've actually spoken to you officially on air since Messi left. So with the short distance of time that has passed, what do you think now? And what's your instinct and what's your feeling about this whole thing?
I'm delighted for him. He was in tears, obviously, at leaving because it was brusque. It was dealt to him like a card of, from down the dealer's sleeve. As an objective person, I'm not a Barca fan, but as an objective person, I think that the way that they treated him over the last 14 months, and that's two presidents, Bartomeu and Laporta, was disgusting. Genuinely, I mean that word with full force, disgusting. He was lied to, and he was treated with disrespect. And I have no time whatsoever for people who talk about, well, he earned lots of money, he's part of the problem. Wrong. It's his rewards over the years were in line with other great sports people in other sports team or individual where the sports could afford it. The way in which the club went wrong was being ruinously infantile in how they ran the club, both in sports and financial terms, and then being hit by a pandemic. Sod's law, you will always be hit by the most damaging thing when you can least afford that to happen. Why I say I'm happy for him is that he's got an opportunity in a very well put together squad to win more trophies. It will at first be, I think, an unhappy and brusque experience for the family, something that matters a lot to him. Not all footballers are driven by how happy their families are. There's lots of evidence of that over the years, sadly. Messi is. I don't know how much listeners and viewers to Football AM care about that, but it's a fact. Therefore, I think that gradually, as autumn turns to winter, the family that thought they were staying by the Mediterranean, just outside Barcelona, will find Paris grey and cold, different language. These things are good for families. They test you, you learn, you develop. It'll be good for the kids. But overall, it's good for Messi. There are many things you can say about Paris Saint-Germain, but they're run by idiots, self-indulgent idiots. He's not one of those things. I think gradually he'll enjoy his football. I think if they can, it's unlikely they don't blend as a squad and as a team. And therefore, I haven't said this before, ever, or written it before, but they should win the treble. Football's odd, so they might not. The thing that rankles a little bit is that to see a departure like his, where he came back to the club after his holidays, having won the Copa America, one of the two big trophies that he craved, and he thought he was signing a deal to stay, and then he was told, "You're out, we can't afford it." Well, hold on a second, what have we been negotiating over for the last 10 weeks? That stank too, and that's the current president, John Laporta. So I'm happy to have seen him here. I'm happy to have listened to him, met him, interviewed him. It's been a privilege. I mean, not just in career terms, but a life privilege to be that near to that kind of genius. And now I'm happy for him because I think he's in a better place.
It's been a remarkable 24 hours in that all of the stuff that we had heard leaking out over the last month about the financial situation was actually laid bare at a press conference yesterday by the current president, who confirmed that the debt is over €1 billion and that they have a plan to stabilise the club over the next couple of years. Simon Cooper was on recently saying that there's a possibility that Barcelona could be the new Leeds, or best case scenario, maybe they're the new Manchester United. What are the parameters at the moment? And having had everything officially confirmed yesterday, what does the near and medium term future look like for Barcelona?
I have three key messages yesterday, Joe, were actually not over $1 billion, because that was previously known as a fact. It's that it's gone up by a couple of $100 million. It's up nearly 1.4 billion in debt now. That's a sizable sum for any business entity to be in debt. The second key message was Laporta, I think, demonstrably accurately saying that the last president had lied when he released his letter to the media a couple of days previously. Bartomeu is under criminal investigation, and I think he did lie. I think it's demonstrably true that he's still living in Cloud Cuckoo Land. He's also living about 50 metres down the road from me in a little flat since his family life broke up. The third really key thing that was announced was that there is an audit ongoing, a financial audit done by an independent accountancy company. And that's when we'll really see how the numbers have got like this. There was a figure quoted yesterday about 90 million in open litigation at the moment. What the hell? Members who pay the money, not just for season tickets, but to run the club in theory, have to know where all this money has gone. You talked about measures, demonstrable measures. One of them would be the fact that these new players that were brought in, particularly Eric Garcia and Memphis Depay, were in really grave danger of not being registered as footballers for Barcelona until January, until the market opened again in January, until Gerard Piqué went to the club and offered that he would reduce his salary and abandon all bonuses, all add-ons, by a significant 8-figure sum. He took that initiative. You know, all the captains have been asked to help a little bit. Several players have been asked to defer payments. Several players have signed new contracts whereby they're paying the same money. They're being paid the same money for over a 5-year period, not a 2-year or 3-year period. All of these measures are important. They're stopgap. They actually show the people, never mind the players, the people who play for Barcelona as being decent, because they weren't obliged to help out, but they have been doing so. But Piqué took it a step further, planned it himself, took counsel from his family, from those who are close, his partner, Shakira, from his representative, and went and gave the club back a big, really big 8-figure sum, which is extraordinary. And that liberated Memphis Depay to play on Sunday night against La Real. And the first goal comes when Memphis Depay lobs the ball in for Gerard Piqué, the man who's cleared his registration for Barcelona by giving up salary to nod home the 1-0 goal. Football truly is extraordinary.
Sure, Piqué, if he wasn't already a club legend, that kind of puts him into a higher esteem immediately, Graham. Is he somebody who one day down the line could be a Barcelona president? Is he thinking that way?
He stated so several years ago in an interview when he was asked if he would like one day to be director of football for Barcelona. He said, "What are you talking about? I'm going to be president." And then he talked about how he envisaged that happening. Subsequently, I think what's really important is that he's then become the owner of the Davis Cup with his partner, Roshu Mikitani from Rakuten. He's brought the €250 million deal for Rakuten to sponsor Barcelona to Barcelona. That's Piqué's doing. He's invested heavily in esports. There's quite a complicated fantasy football thing with blockchain technology, which he was a ground investor in, which is now valued at $3 billion. He's the president of FC and owner. He's the owner of FC Andorra. He is somebody who's needed to do all these things, plus get involved in Twitch. Don't even ask me what that is. I guess you understand Twitch. I don't. But he's invested in a moderately controversial social media youngster who all the footballers love, and via their channel in Spain, they bought the rights to Copa America. They've never had bigger viewing figures for Copa America in Spain than via a Gerard Piqué-funded project on Twitch. Look, I specifically asked around his entourage yesterday whether the plan was still on, and they said yes, that they definitely are trying to advise him not to, that it's a lose-lose situation to become Barcelona president. It's a project for the future. He wants to play till he's 37. He's got so many business interests and a 3-kid family that I don't imagine that it's imminent. But I am convinced, 1, by his personality, 2, for his genuine love for the club, and 3, by his how would you call it, almost all-consuming need to be doing things that test him, that extend him, that cause him risk, and demand things of his own brain. He's a very bright man. He reminds me of Ferguson. Alex Ferguson, his old boss at Manchester United, always said that one of the key components in his armoury was that he would confront problems, look at them, actuarially evaluate the risks of various decisions, and then do it. And he said that always put him ahead of other managers who would be frightened of the net, wouldn't grasp it, would put things off, or wouldn't confront, say, problematic players or problematic officials above them, whatever it might be. Ferguson had that. PK has that. They're not identical in many ways, but they are identical in that. And that's a very big business weapon to have. Therefore, yes, he'll be president, but he's not the solution to be next president and ride to the rescue and save the club. I think he's 34 right now. He'll play for another 3 years. I think we're talking about a significant chunk of time in the future. But yes, we will one day be talking about President Piqué.
What about the performance on the pitch? I mean, Koeman's obviously putting a very brave face on it. He's saying that maybe now we can be more together, and you know, history does record that a superstar leaves and young players come through and they get their opportunity. And he would say that, wouldn't he? I guess is the thing. But is there any truth in it? Is there a possibility that actually some of those kids now are going to be getting a lot more game time, and that the team could be a reasonable team for the next 12 months?
No, it's not a possibility. It's an actual fact that, irrespective of how much they're going to miss Messi's cleverness and leadership and assists and goals, there's a potential La Liga winning team there this season. There's just no question about that at all. They're imperfect. There are areas where if things don't go well, they could be ruined. The atmosphere around the club, Koeman, you said, put a brave face on it. Well, he's only in a job because Laporta didn't really have the money to pay him to go away. Laporta said quite openly at the end of the season that he was gutted about the way they'd thrown away the chances of winning the league. He looked around. He didn't renew Koeman quickly. So Koeman's in a job not on the goodwill or patience, or Laporta not having the guts to grasp the net. They didn't have the money to move him out and move the right person in. So short term, that doesn't help a coach with the group of players. If things start to go wrong, do they look up at him and say, well, we know you're not here for very long? Marc-Andre ter Stegen hasn't recovered yet from his operation, and therefore Neto wants to go, and Neto, the keeper against La Real, the Brazilian ex-Juventus, Valencia, he wants to go, and they want to move him on, bring a kid in goal. So goalkeeping is an area where if there were problems, there can be real difficulties from being title winners. I would say they're not automatic title winners. There's a proper four-way battle for the title this season. But Barcelona are more than good enough to win Spain's Primera División this season. And you talked about youngsters. I'll just say that without any question, there's a clutch. Over the next months, we're going to be talking about Nico Gonzalez, the son of the brilliant Deportivo La Coruña player Fran. Remember him being the leader of the dismantling of European champions AC Milan for Deportivo La Coruña, lost 4-1 into 0-1, 4-0 up in La Coruña. We're going to be talking about Gavi. You already know about Ricky Puig. Pedri's a literal phenomenon. They've been brave enough that Elias Moriba, who is an outstanding footballer, I mean, outstanding at 18, central midfielder. His agents have been asking for so much money that Barcelona just said, no, we can't do it. And they're going to lose him, unfortunately, which is just criminal for those who are Barcelona supporters. Wonderful for whoever picks him up, whether it be Arsenal, whether it be Real Madrid. Elias Moriba, look out for the name. You'll both have seen him a little bit, but look out. There is a clutch of youngsters who are very, very good. There's a senior squad which is too big. They need to move some of them out. But it's also motivated, very, very good. For 80% of the match against La Real, they play really good football. Leo Messi going to La Liga means that people will watch more of that. But I swear to you, look at La Liga this season. There was already fabulous football this weekend. Real Madrid played beyond all expectations. It's a proper Sevilla, Atleti, Barca, Real Madrid four-way battle. And it will be from this weekend just started, which is week 1, until May. A proper competitive league, and still jam-packed of brilliant technical ideas and creative fantasy. So it's a beautiful league, but it's a proper league competition this season.
Is Carlo Ancelotti finally going to be the Gareth Bale whisperer?
He was last time. Do you remember? 2 things really stand out last time. He played him at centre forward, outright centre forward in the front 3 in the Clásico at Camp Nou, which they lost, and then during the game, Carlo went, no, this isn't working. But when he won so many trophies 4 in his first year, it was by being given Bale. He didn't know he was getting Bale. It came late because Daniel Levy was the horse entry whisperer in that deal, and he put Bale up front with Benzema and Cristiano, and he made Di Maria come back into midfield. a three-man midfield and reconverted that brilliant Argentinian wide striker into a midfielder, he and Paul Clement, and they won the Champions League and 3 other knockout trophies. So, yeah, I think Bale is going to be important. I think that he did adequately at the weekend up at Alaves. It's patently clear that this is going to be a goodbye year. He looks fit and motivated. You've got somebody who can speak English to him, somebody that understands how to drive him. There's a completely new fitness trainer in, which is one of the problems that Bale suffered in latter times under Zidane. So, yeah, Real Madrid, I just said, I think they're title contenders. There are problems everywhere. And what makes them title winners, I think, is if they get Kylian Mbappe. And they still absolutely believe that the deal, here you go, to bring Mbappe for about 120 million, which Madrid have been saving for, literally like a little boy with his piggy bank, over the last 2-3 years. They've been popping every last 50 pence piece in there. And they reckon they'll get Kylian Mbappe before the market closes. I'm not saying they will, but they believe they will, and that Cristiano Ronaldo will go from Juventus to Paris Saint-Germain. Listen, boys, if you think that the mad carousel had even begun to slow down because the end of the market is close, don't believe it for a second. The madness is getting quicker and louder, and will do until I'm calling it Blessed September.
Do you think that's more or less likely to happen?
I'm convinced by the fact that Paris Saint-Germain didn't know they were getting Messi. He'd said to them, thanks, but no thanks. He comes back, they go in the door. You saw the owner the other day when at the presentation. He could not, despite all the things he's been through in his life, he could not keep Cheshire Cat grin off his face. They didn't know it was coming. They think they've won the lottery. Mbappe is 1 year from going out of contract. The idea, because part of the idea at Paris Saint-Germain, and it's inescapable, is marketing. It's marketing a brand, it's marketing a country, it's marketing the owners, it's marketing the PSG budget. The idea that they wouldn't be tempted by taking money for Mbappe, which, right, in the overall scheme of things, they don't need, but in business terms, they take money for Mbappe, who's definitely leaving for free in a year, and they put Cristiano Ronaldo and Leo Messi in the same team with Neymar, that they wouldn't at least think about doing that deal. I'm not saying you or I would do it. What do you think? I think that there is a fighting chance because of one domino falling, several dominoes fall in a row. So this is not a news story. People know that Mbappe wants to leave, that he's told the club he wants to leave, that Real Madrid desperately, obsessively want Mbappe. And Cristiano Ronaldo's not particularly happy at Juventus and has told them that he'd like to find an exit. It's just watch this space. It's sort of big, sort of comical James Bond villains playing, with the rest of us like pawns.
Yeah, for sure. Graham, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. The La Liga season is back. That is great stuff there. Do you think it's going to happen?
The final part of that, the Mbappe to Real Madrid thing?
Yeah.
I've changed my mind after listening to Graham a little bit. Before that, I was kind of like, okay, Messi to PSG is kind of like the last part of that done. I thought maybe we were going to see a significant move involving a La Liga team. Maybe Barcelona might try and squeeze the lemon that life has presented to them and make a little bit more lemonade by, I don't know, getting Aubameyang and sending Coutinho off to Arsenal, and I presume financially that would just be the exact same thing, or maybe even it would lighten the books for Barcelona, but Mbappe will be earth-shattering, and for whatever reason, in my head, I had it down as a next year thing, but clearly not. Clearly, like Blessed September, as you referred to it there. I mean, there's a lot of time left to go in this month just yet, and there could be madness. But certainly before that conversation, I had it in my head, right, that's it. The pieces they're finished. Yeah, the jigsaws are done. We'll reconvene next year for some gossip.
Not quite. 13 minutes past 9 this morning here on OTB AM. It's the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. We're with you every day from 7:30 all the way through until 10. And the best place to listen to us is on OTB Sports Radio. And you can get that on your smart speaker. You just say, Alexa, play OTB Sports Radio on TuneIn, or you can get it on the OTB Sports app. And here is what you can listen to today. You can get it on Google Play as well, of course. OTB Gold from 1 o'clock is the story of Ned Wheeler and Wexford in 1956 with Art Foley, two of the legends of the game that we spoke to before they passed away. Dadcast at 3 o'clock. Our career retrospective at 4 is Matt Holland. At 6 o'clock, it's OTB Gold, Mick O'Connell at 80. an interview for the ages. And at 7 o'clock, the show is back live tonight from 7. So that's the top quality sports content that you can listen to. We're there for you all the time. You need never feel alone if you have the OTB Sports app. And that's the best place to listen to the football pod with Paddy and Andy. And we'll get you a clip of that in a moment. We're going to talk to John Duggan next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The football pod with Paddy and Andy, our new weekly Gaelic football show with Paddy Andrews and Andy Moran.
Yes, Dublin aren't in great form, but they're bored out in their mind time. Paul Mannion and Jack McCaffrey aren't playing, yes, because of the stress and the strain, but they're a bit bored, like. They're mid-20s, they should be still playing football for Dublin. The likes of Conor O'Callaghan needs a Mayo coming to Croke Park, needs to be playing a Kerry in an All-Ireland final to really get themselves going, and I think that's where it's at.
Download the OTB Sports app and subscribe to the GAA podcast feed now.
Car insurance is boring, but you don't have to be. Get Set Go is the kind of car insurance you can sort in a few minutes online, then bounce on with your day. Are you ready for Quick Start Insurance? Get a quote now at getsetgo.ie. MCL Insurance Services Ireland Limited, trading as getsetgo.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
15 minutes past 9. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. John Duggan's with us. John, good morning to you. How are you?
Jaron Owen, what's the private joke?
I'm glad it was private. I thought I got caught. We'll see. Who knows? Everybody's rewinding quickly. How are you this morning, John?
Good, lads. Yourselves?
Very good.
Yeah, so there's only really two things to talk about, I would say, from my perspective, Dublin and Harry Kane, because there's not much sports news going on, to be honest.
Well, let me start with Harry Kane, right? So you're a Spurs fan. You must have felt the betrayal deep in the core of your soul, and then you win 1-0 at the weekend against Man City, and you're like, screw you, Harry Kane, we don't need you, give us the money, off you go. Or are you like, if you stick Harry Kane in that team, who knows what happens?
I'm not the biggest fan of Harry Kane. All back to the Champions League final. Lucas Moura scored a hat-trick against Ajax in probably the greatest day in Tottenham's history contemporarily. And Harry Kane wasn't fit. And Harry Kane said, I'm going to be good to go against Liverpool, Madrid. You were there, Ger. And Virgil van Dijk put him in his pocket. Harry Kane is all about Harry Kane. And they've messed up. He and his team have messed up here about this gentleman's agreement and this contract. If you were offering me 200 grand a week, Ger, and we signed a 6-year deal, I'd have all the expensive lawyers in Dublin going through the fine print of a contract. It seems like Harry Kane hasn't done that and his team because they don't have a release clause.
Well, can I just compare and contrast Jack Grealish, who is Jack the lad and, is like constantly in trouble with the tabloid press and is generally considered not to be the sharpest tool in the shed. He was smart enough to put a release clause in his contract that had a price, and when the price was paid, he was free to go. If Harry Kane had the same thing, he would now be a Manchester City player and he would get what he wants. But his arrogance, his vanity, whatever it was, has caused him to accept a handshake, if there was one, or a verbal agreement, or we'll look after you, flabby language. He's like, well, I'm Harry Kane, England captain, the greatest player that this club has ever had. You can't screw me. But it turns out you can get screwed.
Daniel Levy, Berbatov, United. We all talk about Ferguson's comment about it being worse than his hip replacement. Modric, that deal, Bale. This is the hardest nosed negotiator in football. He's got a valuation on Harry Kane. If you read the Sunday Times, 150 million is probably the valuation. The only issue for Levy is that Mbappe is out of contract next summer, and Haaland has that release clause of 75 million, which can be activated next summer. How much will Harry Kane be worth next summer when he's turning 29? That's the only thing for Levy. Do you take 120 in Bernardo Silva? Maybe you do. And we look at the way Spurs played the other day with Son as a fulcrum. Maybe you should.
Charlie Kane is trending on Twitter, John. He is a man, an agent, and he's got one client, and it is, of course, his namesake, Harry. It's very, very entertaining for people who want to check it out. Is he a big player in all of this? Is he actually getting away scot-free here when Daniel Levy is seen as a hard-nosed negotiator?
Well, some people can use their families, like was it Lionel Messi and his dad? So it's all about. Surely anybody would know that if you're going into a 6-year arrangement, you don't have gentlemen's agreements. Gentlemen's agreements sounds like something out of The Godfather and Marlon Brando and Orange Peel and all this kind of thing. you go through the fine print. If you're talking about a deal with so much money, 200,000 sterling a week, it's just obvious common sense. It doesn't matter who your agent is, your brother, your cousin, your dog. Doesn't matter who it is.
The 6-year deal was stupid. If he'd signed a 3-year deal, he would have been able to pocket most of the 120 million himself.
Yeah, Harry Kane needs now to get back on the bike. Every single English player was going through them. Luke Shaw, Harry Maguire, Declan Rice, Raheem Sterling, Mason Mount. They all started at the weekend. He wasn't ready. And the fans will quickly turn on him because ultimately you're going to be a professional and you're going to keep going with this.
So you are now in this scenario as a Spurs fan where you want to take the money and run.
Yes, I think I would now, because I get the feeling that we just need to look forward as a club, because Harry Kane wants to go and eventually he will go. And I think we had this problem with Eriksen, Christian Eriksen. We could have, he went for quite a small amount to Inter. Harry Kane next year, what's he worth? 80 million?
Who knows?
If he doesn't have a great season.
Who knows? Maybe less. It could be 50. It could be,
I take the money. I take 120 from City. Bernardo Silva, throw him into the mix as well.
Okay, the Dubs.
Yeah.
What is it? Is it an accumulation of tiny things? Is it one big thing? Is it just the end of the road for a great team? Now that the dust is slowly settling, and maybe it's not. Who knows? We could have a long winter of discontent, or we could just have a long winter of them nursing their grudges until they re-emerge, reborn next season. So, what's your take?
Dublin finished in this final replay in 2019. That was the mountain. That was the Mount Everest of Dublin. Last year they won a soft All-Ireland. They cruised through Leinster as they always do. They played a Division 4 team to beat Cavan in the semi-final, and then a Mayo team then to face Mayo, who were not on the journey that they're on now. So Dublin won a very soft All-Ireland without carrying the equation. So effectively for me it ended with the 5 in a row. And it's a natural end, it's a natural cycle. All the players they've lost, the two most important players being Cluxton, we saw the other day with the panic in the defence, not only for his goal-kicking ability, but more importantly for his leadership, and Jack McCaffrey being the other player. It's death by 1,000 cuts. It reminds me very much of 2012. Similar season, similar struggle through Leinster, similar defeat to Mayo in a semi-final. They badly needed a reset. Almost, they probably, if they'd faced Kerry last year, they might not have won the All-Ireland. So I just see it as death by 1,000 cuts and a natural cycle of a team of a lifetime. Desi will probably get another chance because he won the All-Ireland last year. But the way they finished it, as a fan, I'm glad it's all over in a way, because it wasn't a struggle to be a Dublin fan anymore. And I didn't like the way they finished the game the other day, which was just marked by indiscipline and nothing else. They remind me a bit, if you're looking at the football analogies, like that Spanish team, it was just possession but no cutting edge. The decline of the Spain team, or if you're going to use another analogy, it was like the Dutch. Total football turned into Holland in the 2010 World Cup final, where it was just way over the top in terms of indiscipline. So
you're saying maybe I like the pain, John.
Well, if you're eating fillet steak with different sauces every single day of your life, and if every single day of your life is a party, sometimes that gets a bit boring.
Your arteries harden pretty quickly.
Yeah, but also as well, when do stars become stars? When did Jack McCaffrey become a star? When did Brian Fenton become a star? These Mayo lads were fearless and they had such energy, and they can take Aidan O'Shea off and everything. So if you're Enda Hessian, or if you're Ryan O'Donoghue or Tommy Conroy or Pork O'Hora, sometimes teams arrive, and maybe this was a sign that Mayo are arriving. I still think Kerry are favourites, but it'll be Aiton versus Eoin, won't it? It'll be Kerry and Mayo. And you just hope from Mayo's perspective that's not 2006 again, it's not 2012 again, where they have that brilliant win and that gets done in the final.
I mean, look,
it won't be 06 again. 2012 was 2012 could be.
It could be 06.
This Mayo team really
do. Well, they could be 10 points down at half time, as I said. It's like not, I just
bad things do happen to Mayo in finals for sure. So I can see it a 2012 thing.
Every range of outcome is on the table. Literally every range of outcome. They could blow whoever's in the final away. They could just carry on where they left off, and they could be like a 5-point, 7-point winners. It's like, or they could lose by a similar amount. So that's why there is an uncertainty of outcome, and it's going to be a classic.
Yeah.
John, good stuff. Thanks a million.
All right, lads, take care.
23 minutes past 9 this morning. Those thoughts from John Duggan. Dublin ladies are the most physical side in the country, but they're also the most skillful. Alwyn Carey is a perfect example. She gets Cardiff challenges that would be legit in the men's game. Dennis on Mick Bohan. There's your next Dublin men's manager. Speaks a lot of sense, well spoken. Jesus, lads, Dublin are allowed to use the game. Hardly means write them off, says BK. I mean, we need to analyse where they are. That's the whole point of the power rankings, is like, where are they right now? And, as third, we're not really writing them off, and we did say that we would expect them to win one in Ireland out of every 3 for the next while. Dublin's frustration led to the few awful challenges. Had they been 10 points up, then none of that would have happened. A disgrace there wasn't a few reds shown, says Jamie G. And Cam says it's a pity Mayo will lose the final after beating Dublin.
It's interesting how divergent the opinions are on the Dublin physicality, isn't it? Like we got a lot of blowback to having that conversation yesterday, and the blowback was,
you can't say that
from Dublin people. Naturally, in fairness, like, I mean, I would be as defensive about Kerry, and you would.
But
be
the bit where I
there.
said I'm actually jealous of this.
Yeah, but then there was also like a bit where we said that it was like the hallmark of a great team, and people were like, you can't say it was the hallmark of a great team. So people on the other side of the fence are kind of annoyed with the conversation as well. It is a conversation that has exercised a lot of people, and it's just interesting that that's come up quite a bit after Dublin have been beaten, because it does feel that it's a similar sort of tone to the post-17 final.
The Mayo Beat Dublin Fallout Special Edition of the Football Pod is live and exclusive on the OTB Sports app today. There's a 24-hour window where the only place you can listen to the Paddy Nanny Pod is on the OTB Sports app. It's everywhere tomorrow, but today we know you want it. You haven't had your fix. Hook it to your veins, Mayo people. Find out what went wrong, Dublin fans, and the rest of us can just wallow in the glory of some proper analysis that explains exactly what happened, why it happened, and maybe when it happened. Here's a taste of what's to come.
Yeah, he deserved a bit of luck, and I'd say Dublin are wondering why we got the second chance at it. But Robbie, I could honestly say, is probably the best teammate I've ever had in my whole career. Like he carries the dressing room. He really is a special human being, and like for him to, I suppose, go through what he's went through for the last couple of years has been exceptionally tough for us as a group, because he means so much to the group, you know. And yeah, there was a picture with himself and his mum, dad, and Orla after the game. It was just, it was beautiful. I'm nearly getting emotional there talking about it, because he's such a good guy, and I know I got caught badly jumping up and down like a fool in the stand. But some of that was for Mayo, but some of that was for Robbie, and it was just it was a great moment.
Yeah, 100%, and you can tell how much it means and how much it meant after the game as well.
Oh, like I just thought, I was in college with him as well. I know, like I was the beneficiary, or we were the beneficiary of a high-profile error for him, and you can only imagine how difficult that is. You know, losing big championship games, or when you feel you haven't done your job or something's gone wrong for you, that is an incredibly difficult thing to do for any player. And like he kicked 3 massive points under the biggest pressure. And like I said, it hasn't always been sunshine and roses for Robbie Healy coming through, or for a lot of these Mayo guys, and that's why. For me, standing there watching the game and reflecting on it now, you have. I always touched on it last week, as feisty as these games got, there was always a respect there, because you know what those guys are putting in and putting their shoulders to the wheel, and no more so than Robbie Henley. So, look, it was a brilliant moment, and like I say, it nearly felt like it was written, that script. Some of the plays, some of the moments, like say Dermot O'Connor's play, Robbie Henley kicking the scores, Lee Keegan coming out with a performance like that, when people are saying, he's not as good as he used to be.
In extra time, lads, Lee Keegan's performance was even better than he had.
Spectacular, yeah, spectacular, and that's you've got to hold your head after them. I know the Dublin players, and I know the Dublin coaches and supporters. They'll be hurting about it, of course they will, but you've got to respect what Mayo brought on Saturday night, and for guys like that, for Robbie and Lee and guys like that, it is a special night for them. But there's one more game to go.
Yeah,
it's got to count for something. They're going to be underdogs, whoever they play in the final, whether Tyrone cause an upset and take Kerry out, or whether it's Kerry kind of march on like they have been. Mayo are going to need all of that in abundance in a couple of weeks' time. But for Saturday night, it was a special night for them.
It was 14-all, lads. It was 14-all, and we're kicking away from the hill, and Robbie Henley's a kick out, and he drills one down the middle to Jordan Flynn, which we go and make it 15-14. Like, everyone will go on about his kick to equalise the game. That kick out, guys, is absolutely amazing. We win the kick, we're straight up the field, and it's gone down through the middle channel.
I couldn't understand how Flynn was on his own. He's on his own in the middle.
Howard's coming from behind him, and I'm thinking that is a ballsy kick.
Yeah.
And I actually think Howard's going to get there, because it hangs in the air a bit. Even though he drills it, there was obviously a bit of a breeze there inside, and it's hanging. And I'm going, if Howard wins that, it's a huge play. But That's the pressure goalkeepers are under. That's what we talk about. Every kick, particularly at that stage of the game, matters. But to have the stones to go and take it on and to execute it under pressure, look, phenomenal. And he should get the credit because
I thought he was the man of the match.
I thought so too.
There'll be 3 man of the matches.
Yeah.
no.
I have one more shout. I have one more Mayo man I want to get into.
Sorry, 4 man of the matches.
Well, we're going to have to wait and find out who the 4th man of the match was. You were saying Robbie Henley was man of the match, Tommy?
Yeah, maybe I was caught up in the emotional a wee bit, Jared. It's an incredibly emotional podcast, I'll tell you that much. There's anger and elation, there's frustration, there's hope. Even I got a little upset at one stage. So
it's the 7 stages of grief that you're watching Paddy Andrews go through for the first time ever. I mean, I feel so much sympathy for these poor Dublin people who are finally understanding what the rest of that country has felt like forever.
100%. And Andy got to watch the match for the first time as a fan with his wife. He's been going out with Jenny ever since he started playing for Mayo, and it's the first time he's ever got to see a senior men's game in Croke Park with Jenny. Poor Paddy had to sit beside me for the whole match. So I was surprised that there wasn't a column written about Paddy's reactions in the press box during the game. Very calm, obviously, in the first half because Dublin were in complete control, but panic set in the second half. You could see it.
What was so sorry? Tell us more about their reactions within the press box.
How could you see it?
Well, you could just see it like. So we in the podcast we spent a good bit of time talking about the Mayo players that stood up. We hear a lot about Enda Hessian, who was on Andy Moran's the under-20 team that Andy Moran was involved with Mayo. We hear a lot about the likes of Jordan Flynn. We hear what it means to Robbie Henley, the coming of age of Tommy Conroy. But then we talk about Dublin and the mistakes and the individual mistakes and what went wrong for them. I had a theory that Mayo sort of changed once Aidan O'Shea went off, and there was an element of fearlessness about the performance after that. And I was wondering, was that because O'Shea was gone? Andy rubbishes it because he's spot on. Like Mayo were still 3 points down in the 62nd minute. Like it was more to do with Dublin. Like Mayo plugged away as they have done over the last decade. They stayed in touch. They were brave. They kept at them. This was more to do with the combustion of Dublin, in my opinion. Mayo, it was fitting that they were the team that was there at the end, and I'm not sure any other team would have been brave enough to go and push them all the way. We know one county came close earlier in the year, but not close enough. But yeah, I don't know. I think this was a lot more to do with James McCarthy going for goal at the start of the game as a throw-in, not taking the point or squaring it across the square. Davy Byrne dropping the ball through his legs in the sideline. John Small walking at stages in the second half. Kieran Kilkenny getting turned over twice with hand passes. Completely uncharacteristic moments from Dublin footballers. That iconic passage of play at the end of the game where James Carr and Conor O'Shea are chasing down Brian Howard, Evan Comfort and Davy Byrne. Where the hell were the rest of the Dublin footballers? Where were they?
I don't know. I think that's
what we get into.
Yeah.
That's what we get into. Well, and how the County of Mayo were brave enough to stick with them and stay with them. And
they broke them. Over the course of the game, they broke them.
Yeah, and Andy actually, he's very good talking about the team that finished that game for Mayo. So many of them had been on the under-21 team that bet Dublin in 2016. And he just talks about the impact that had. When Diarmuid O'Connor is sizing up Tom Lahiff and he's thinking, I've beaten this fella before. I know his weaknesses. I've studied him for 7 or 8 years. We know how to beat them. And if you look at the Dublin bench, like we've been talking about it all year, the players that Dublin emptied off that bench were not good enough. Or maybe they're good enough, but they just didn't add it. Like, we're not talking about points, because the Mayo bench only scored 2 points, the Dublin bench scored 1, Sean Booker scored the first point in extra time. But impact. Like, James Carr kicked 2 wides, but boy, did he chase down lost causes. Darren Cohen buried ghosts of last year's All-Ireland final, where he was maybe held up with somebody who wasn't good enough, but he kicked one of the points of the game, an outrageous score from 40 yards when they really needed it. So James Horan deserves an awful lot of kudos, because he has managed that Mayo transition incredibly well over the last 2 or 3 years.
No pressure on Cohen to kick that score. It was interesting. Like, it was an interplay with 3 of them kind of in that left corner. Fairly standard move where they recycle it, and he'd been standing in that pocket for 4 or 5 seconds. Nobody got out to him. Nobody came out to marshal that space. The brain power and the physicality and the energy wasn't left with the Dubs in defence at that stage of the game to be able to track that down, which is, how did that happen and why did that happen is the thing that they'll be watching over on the video again and again, deciding, okay, this player is not the right player for us, or we're going to have to coach them in a slightly different way to get them back to the level where that wouldn't have happened in previous years. There was no diving blocks from the Dubs that we would have seen. There was a lack of energy.
Eight out of 9 Mayo scores in the second half came from turnovers. I know we're running out of time, so would I just give it the plug of when the podcast is available?
Go for it.
Tuesday, today, in the next 2 hours, it's going to be available on the OTB Sports app. Tomorrow, if you want to wait, I don't know why you'd want to wait. Like, it's Paddy Anders and Andy Moran talking about Dublin and Mayo, the greatest team we've ever seen falling apart. And the Mayo boys, halfway through the podcast, start thinking about Kerry Tyrone. So they've gone by the past the stage of celebrating. So Wednesday it'll be available everywhere else. So today, get the OTB Sports app and you'll get episode 15 of the Football Pod of Paddy and Andy.
Good stuff, Tommy. Looking forward to it. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Subscribe to the OTB AM podcast and our YouTube channel to get all our best stuff. If you turn on your notifications on YouTube, you'll be able to keep track of all our new videos. And likewise, if you turn on the notifications on the app, it's the same. We'll leave you this morning. Kevin Kilban talking to Joe Malloy. Enjoy.
You're welcome along to the football show. Very happy to say Mr. Kevin Kilban joins us. Big happy Mayo heading him. Hello.
Hi Joe, how you keeping?
Yeah, very well. I'm told you couldn't even see the game. You were listening on Midwest in agony.
Yeah, Michael D. We had partisan commentary all the way I had at the weekend, Joe. It was great stuff. And I watched it all back. I've watched it back since, but it was just, it was an incredible listen when I was listening to it live, and obviously watching it back afterwards. There was so many key moments, wasn't there? So it was great. It was great stuff. And, you know, one more hurdle to get over the line now, but hopefully that can happen. But we'll see. We take nothing for granted, you know that.
I love that you're talking like one of the players here.
Well, you don't. Well, let's be fair, Joe. How many times we've been in this position over the years where we've had this conversation, you and I. Yeah, this is it now. This weekend is going to be the one, absolutely. So no, nothing for granted, and there'll be no Mayo person that'll be taking it for granted at all. I'm sure of that.
Yeah, it was an incredible game. You'd need to watch it back about 2 or 3 times to get all the moments. So many key moments, so many extraordinary little passages of play. It was an epic. It was like this very visceral occasion.
Yeah. It was absolutely amazing. It really was. And you looked at little things. I was actually just, when I was watching it back last night, just thinking, you know, Conor Loftus-Point right on the stroke of half time to take it to a 6-point game. And that was obviously a huge moment, wasn't it? And the bit of a breeze that Mayo had with them in the second half as well, and the momentum that they gained from the first 2 or 3 minutes of the second half, it was just unbelievable. And then obviously Rob Henley with that at the end, you know, I think every Mayo man and woman were delighted with him, and you know that he got that moment at the end of the game to do that. It was just incredible. And as I said, I think we're all delighted, and I'm sure there's one or two others in my position at the weekend that would have just absolutely thrilled with it all. It was incredible.
Yeah, it was amazing. Will you fly back for the final?
I don't think I can, Joe. I don't think I can come back. I was absolutely nailed on to get it all sorted, but I don't think I can. I don't think I can get back. Our little girl here starts school on the Monday, so it's just a bad weekend for us. So I don't think I can get back. So no, family matters, I suppose.
You're maturing. I respect that.
Yeah, exactly. What would I have said a couple of years ago? There wouldn't have even been a question, would there? It wouldn't have even been a thought in my head.
So let's talk football. Really interesting opening weekend. We've already talked Man City Spurs are good with Pat Nevin, so we won't labour that point. I am curious though, as somebody who's been in dressing rooms and understands how these Harry Kane type dilemmas work for both player and dressing room and club, what do you make of the way he's played it over the last couple of weeks?
I think we all knew the way he was going to play it. Certainly once the message was coming out at the end of the season, even prior to the Euros, that he wanted to go. It was, just prior or just short of him actually saying it around the Euros. Look, I'm gone. I'm desperate to leave the place, which of course he absolutely is. I've said it to you. I've been on with you so many times, Joe, haven't we? We've had this sort of conversation around a player when they're about to leave a club, and I've seen so many players absolutely shafted by clubs through the course of my career. Not at the level of Harry Kane, absolutely, but where the club had every single bit of power within them to do whatever they wanted. Players training at 6 o'clock in the evening, round the clock, just to piss them off, essentially, just to make sure that if they're not going to sign a contract, they're going to make it as difficult as a stay as they can for the player. Whereas it is different now. We're in a different era, in a different game, and the player does have the power invariably with what's happening. So I think he's played it exactly the way that he feels as though it should be played. Daniel Levy's notorious in it seems, from what clubs have said over the years, in dealing with him and getting deals over the line, first of all, whether he's buying or selling. So I think Harry Kane's got a battle on to try to make this deal get over the line. But the only thing he can do is just do it right by his contract, turn up for training, do the right things. But it just, I just feel as though that maybe the conversation at times could be a little bit forthright between the player and Daniel Levy, because I would imagine that Levy and Kane have said very little to each other. And Levy, because of Kane's stature within the club, I think they could pick up the phone to each other and go, look, because Levy knows full well with what's happened over the last few years. And again, we've had the conversation about Kane for 5 years now, it seems, that, look, Kane's going to go. He's going to go this summer, or I'm sure he's going to go this summer. But he's continuously said he wanted to break record at Spurs. So I just like to see the conversation, people being man about it, essentially. Harry Kane being able to pick up the phone to Levy and say, look, this is what's happening. I want to go. You want to get the best possible price for me. I know that it's not ideal. It's not great for anybody here, the way things are going to go, but let's just get this deal struck. But there's going to be a standoff, I'm sure, in the coming weeks before anything can be done. Yeah, well, it depends who you listen to. Certainly the Sunday Times yesterday, Jonathan Northcroft led with a piece which he said was an exclusive, and the word was that with 16 days left in the transfer window, Spurs will not sell Kane. They feel it doesn't give them enough time to go out and buy. Even if City do pay the 160 million sterling, it says here, Spurs are still very reluctant to sell with just now 16 days left in the transfer window. Now, who knows? I mean, 160 million is very hard to turn down for a 28-year-old, but that's what they're saying, and I'm sure Daniel Levy is leaking this out to the papers, and so that's where we are. Man City yesterday, with Ferran Torres leading the line, and admittedly with, De Bruyne still to get fit and Foden to come back into the side, but they really did look like a team that do need that focal point. I suspect, having lost that game 1-0, having lost the Champions League final 1-0, that their willingness to hit 150, 160 million might just have grown a touch yesterday. Yeah, and that's normally the case. To be honest with you, Joe, I didn't see the game. Sure. So, but you're keeping across it. You're seeing the results as they come in, and it was a surprise, I think, to most people when they seen the result coming through. But this is what invariably happens when a club is desperate to get a player in, and they know that they're short in a certain position, and they know that they need to get that deal over the line quickly. That you meet the club, the selling club's valuation a lot more quicker after a result like that, don't you? That's what usually does happen. So it's it'll be an interesting couple of weeks. And I know I didn't even see the piece that Jonathan Norcross had written there, but I just think that, and I've said it before as well, around mentally, the mental space that Harry Kane's in right now, is he going to be right? It might be Christmas before he really decides, and I think he will say, I'm knuckling down, I'm going to get on with it, but it might be Christmas before you really start to see the best of him. So Tottenham have lost him for that 6 months, I'd feel, anyway. Certainly 2 or 3 of those months, because he's not necessarily going to be up to speed, up to the pace of things actually physically on the pitch in the coming weeks. So it's going to be a while, I think, before you get him right as it is. And notoriously, Harry Kane has always been quite poor at the start of the season, or his goal scoring form has always been quite poor at the start of the season. So if that is the case, then what is the point in if that is the case and that does happen, what is the point in Kane in Kane staying around the place? You might as well, as you say, at 28 years of age, take that money in January and give Nuno Espirito Santo the best possible chance to get the best players in the next year or 18 months. I know you did see Manchester United 5, Leeds 1 on the Saturday morning, as it was over here, very early for you over there. So a lot of people got up and watched this game and were looking forward to this game. I mean, it was really interesting on a few fronts. If anyone didn't catch it, Greenwood played through the middle as a 9. Pogba was maybe more in that Rashford role. Bruno through the middle behind Greenwood. Daniel James getting his guaranteed start against Leeds every year, as he will. And Fred McTominay behind them. How did you like Pogba in that role? How did you like Greenwood? What did you make of this game? Well, you couldn't help but like Pogba. I thought Do you know when he plays in midfield, Joe? When he's playing in a 2 or a 3, he seems to run out of position too freely and leave his team exposed. I think when he is given a more advanced role like he was playing at the weekend, if he runs out of position, it's not necessarily going to hurt the team as much. And clearly you could see without the ball, as I was saying, his work rate was top class, I felt. At the start of the game, I thought his attitude was spot on at the start of the match. But then you could see the touches coming in. And I mean, if you looked at him in the summer, Joe, potentially was certainly before France got knocked out, he's the best midfield player at the tournament across the summer. So he's coming into to this Premier League season in full form, ready to, you would feel as though, to really have a good goal this year, whether he stays or goes or wherever he goes, even if he moved in the next couple of weeks. I felt as though that you saw that little bit of player playing with a bit of freedom, given the confidence to go out and play by his manager in Solskjaer. I just thought he was just absolutely sensational. And the rest of the United's team around him, although it was a slow start before they got really going, before the goals started to flow, they looked solid enough. I think they looked comfortable, throughout the game. And I think given the players that's due to come back into that side and due to come in, certainly with Varane adding strength to them as well, United looked a prospect, didn't they? They looked seriously good, given how Leeds played, because Leeds, last season, they started the season brilliantly well. They came up off the back of a brilliant season. Momentum was with them, the high energy that they play. I think they nullified that threat from Leeds. They stopped that real high press that Bielsa puts on them. And I think throughout the game, as it wore on, they just took the total steam out of Leeds, and they looked totally dominant. They looked a class apart as you reached the 70-minute mark of that game. Yeah.
And then so Fernandes did his thing as well. It's odd that he has scored just 6 goals for Portugal in 5 years. So if you get the United version of...
You tweeted that out. I love seeing a tweet from you about United.
Hey, listen,
I do like that.
If you get the United version of Bruno and the French version of Pogba, you've got a team there with those two. So, is Pogba so suited to that area of the pitch that Rashford might struggle to get back in?
Probably not. I think when they're going to be at full strength, you would imagine Pogba will probably be asked to play a little bit deeper, and Rashford will come back in the side. But I think you do learn the message from playing Pogba, and how you play Pogba is if you can play him with a bit more freedom and you get stability behind him, you might even be able to play him as a 10, play him with 2 sitters behind, a 4-2-3-1 system to get him more advanced and having more of an influence with his creativity, with his ability that he's got, because he does switch off defensively. You can't get away from that. I think, as I was saying before, I think he runs out of position at times, leaves his team exposed. And that's where United have struggled of getting the best out of Pogba over the years, when he's run out of position, when he's had to play a disciplined role. He certainly was never going to play for Mourinho, was he, the way that Mourinho lines his sides up. So Solskjaer has been getting the best out of him, or getting better performances out of him over the last year or 18 months since he's taken over. But I think if you look at United in general, they've got too many players in certain positions that Pogba's going to have to play in midfield, and it's just about getting the stability around him in the middle of the park that's going to get the best out of him, I'd feel. Yeah. I don't think he's going to play. He's not going to play ahead of Rashford, really, Joe, because you're going to get Rashford and Pogba into that same side for United. They're going to be a better side with those two in it. So you would think that Rashford's definitely going to play on the left-hand side further forward.
Yeah, I would have thought so. It's going to be interesting to see what their best side is. Like, they have an unbelievably strong squad now in terms of, various players, like Sancho was on the bench, for instance, and Cavani to come back in. So what is their best 11 in the bigger games? That's going to be really interesting to see what they find. Like Greenwood up front as a 9, his finish was sublime. The quality there is just so eye-catching, and he does have those moments where you stop and say, you realise again, he can do that too, and he's got that in his armoury, and wow, this is really exciting. So how quickly, and this with Cavani there as well, it's not urgent, but how quickly can he get up to speed as number 9 to lead the line for United?
Greenwood, you mean? Sorry, or Cavani?
Well, I'm saying with Cavani, Cavani in the squad, it's not urgent. Like, he doesn't need to do it for this season necessarily, but I mean, you would think he's pretty close to doing it.
Yeah, I think so. You can see with the goal. I mean, the goal was great. I think obviously the ball from Pogba was sublime that put him through, but he's quick. I don't think he's lightning quick, is he? I think he's quick, that he can get away from a defender. But even when the Leeds defender was trying to get back across him, I think he had the awareness to step his body across him, just to stop him getting getting anywhere near him and then tee himself up for the strike. He finishes brilliant with both feet, doesn't he? So he is, and he's had that full pre-season. He would have been one of the first back for Man United pre-season. He's not had an international tournament to disrupt his development this year. So that's why you probably will see him start a lot of the games up until maybe the end of September, even into October, because of the fitness levels. But I think he's just going to get better and better, Joe. He is. The more games that he plays, obviously he's going to get better and better with the players that surround him, with Sancho probably creating chances for him as well, Rashford, Pogba, and all these players that they've got from the creative sense. He will get better and better. But the luxury that Solskjaer does have, as you say, with Cavani, he's got the two that can come in. And you forget in Martial, this might give him the kick up the backside that he needs, where you might start to see Martial produce some of the form that we know he can produce. It looks as though he's going to be moved on, don't get me wrong, but he's a name you forget. For all his ability, we talk about Pogba over the last few years, and he's been a bit like Martial. We've waited for Pogba to seriously kick on at times. He's not necessarily done it in the big games. He's not necessarily had the defensive mind on his game, Pogba. Martial's been the same. I think United don't look great when he started matches, but when he's came off the bench in certain games, he looks a world beater. So to have him coming off the bench certainly gives United different options as well going forward. Great options.
Yeah, for sure. We've got this big four then, and so United are very much part of it. You feel just with their talent and the moments they can produce, they might not need to dominate games, because they didn't dominate enough games last year. They're often just a team that come up with great moments of quality because they've got such brilliant players. That should be enough for them to beat a huge amount of teams across this Premier League season and to really increase in the number of points they had at the end of last year. What's the concern with United? What is the weakness for you that would jump out in terms of actually winning a league title this year?
You would have said defensively, wouldn't you? The way that they've gone forward at times, and as I spoke about Pogba and certain players that's playing in the middle of the park that haven't necessarily been able to provide the stability to, whether it's Wan-Bissaka or Luke Shaw that's getting forward in that defensive structure. But Varane coming in there gives them that pace that they can actually go. They can leave Varane back one-on-one at times, and they're going to be fine. He's got the pace to deal with anything. It is in midfield. I like McTominay. I don't necessarily, and I've said it constantly about Fred, he's done quite well over the last year or so for United, but I don't see him as being a real dominant player that's going to control the game for United. He's a high energy player rather than someone that's going to control the ball for them. That's why they need McTominay alongside him. Matic is not the answer as well. He's probably on, certainly on the wane in his career terms anyway. So they probably need somebody, a midfielder or someone that's going to give them that stability in midfield that's going to play behind Pogba, as I was saying earlier. But they look to me like they've got a strong 1 to 18 now. Goalkeeper, of course, is Henderson going to be that that main player for them alongside De Gea? I don't know, Joe. I don't know. Maybe the goalkeeper's seriously a position that they've not got a world-class goalkeeper at the moment in there, have they? But I think in general, the squad, Joe, looks very, very strong. It does look strong. You have to say that. Yeah.
So the Premier League season kicked off the night before. Brentford 2, Arsenal 0. Thomas Frank, with the kids in the crowd, warmed the heart. Hey Jude being sung. Yeah. Brentford Community Stadium. I mean, I know if they stay in the Premier League, within 2 or 3 years, it'll be the Qatar Airways Stadium. But for now, it's lovely that it's called the Brentford Community Stadium. So there was a nice little touch of romance to kick off the Premier League season. And it'll be interesting to see how Brentford go. As for Arsenal, I mean, you just run out of things to say about Arsenal because it's so grim and it seems like they're flailing. So they were 8th last year, Kev. You look at the Premier League as it stands this year, the Big Four will be the Big Four. You would back Leicester to go 5th again. Last year, West Ham and Spurs finished ahead of Arsenal. Leeds were behind them. Everton were behind them in 10th. Arsenal were about 8th. Everything just points to Arsenal finishing about 8th again and very little progress.
Yeah, I agree. 8th to 10th looks probably where they are. And to look at the goals they conceded, particularly the second one, long throw, bouncing in the penalty area. And if you looked at them throughout the game, Joe, as well, I have been critical of Xhaka over the years, but look at him across the course of this summer at the Euros and how well he played for Switzerland. Now you're seeing what Xhaka is all about again, aren't you? Really, and that's how I felt with Arsenal. There's something that's gone wrong over the last 10 maybe even 15 years there at Arsenal, that they've not been able to get themselves out of it, no matter how many players they've brought in to try and change the situation. They could go on. Who have they got the next two now, Joe? Is it Man City and it's not Spurs, is it? They've got two of the top sides in the next couple of games, haven't they? I know Man City's one of them. But they could give Man City a great game and go up against them. They could play counter-attacking football against them and maybe even get a result. But it is, whoever it would be this season, whether they're going to be playing Wolves, Brighton, as it was Brentford at the weekend, whoever they're going to play when they come up against that type of team, you never fancy them. You never fancy them because all those sides think they've got a chance against them. Go and press them high when they're in possession of the ball. Are they good enough to really soak up pressure in the games when they're under pressure as well? They're not. That's what it is. There's a real weakness there again about them. And, watching Everton, I would say, certainly at the weekend, you're saying, obviously, they finished ahead of them last season. I think Everton are probably in a better position than Arsenal right now. So they're slipping maybe out the top 8 again, and that's the way that it looks to me. So I think it's going to be a struggle of a season for Arsenal again, yeah.
Yeah, they have Chelsea next week, and then they're away to Man City. That's the next two for Arsenal.
Yeah, Chelsea, Man City, yeah.
And the Lacazette-Aubameyang situation seems very shaky as well. So, Balogun started up front. Lacazette, there's been speculation for some time that he wants away. He's in the final year of his contract. And then Aubameyang, who didn't have his best season last year, he comes into this season off 1 goal in his last 11. There are now reports of a certain coolness in the relationship between him and Arteta. Don't know to what extent that's true or not. They signed Ben White, obviously, in defence, although I saw Jamie Carragher was scathing over Ben White, says he doesn't think he's a dominant enough defender. But the Lacazette-Aubameyang situation, on top of just this cultural issue at the club, means I don't really know how this improves or how Arteta gets to grips with it. Thus far, Arteta speaks very calmly and speaks quite well, and obviously, we know what a great player he was, and he was alongside Guardiola, so he's seen how things should work, and yet it doesn't really feel like much is happening under his watch.
Yeah. Very little's changed since Unai Emery, I have to say that. Very little's changed since Wenger, hasn't he? We're still looking at these frailties, and maybe just going back of what you're saying there, what Jamie Carragher is saying about Ben White, he didn't look dominant enough just to deal with the messy stuff around the game. He's very good on the ball, and I think he's going to be a very good defender maybe going forward, but he's got a lot to learn. And that Arsenal defence is still always, I feel, learning on the job. When there's no real leader that's going to control them at the back. Up front, as you say, with Aubameyang and Lacazette, who are the two big players for them over the last few years, they look as though they want away because they're not getting the success. They feel as though that they should be playing Champions League football, or certainly Aubameyang does, doesn't he? So when you're not playing at the top, in the top level as European or world footballers, when they come to play for a top club, they want to be playing Champions League football. And if that's not presented to them season after season, like it has been with Arsenal, there's only one way it's going to go, and that's going to put more pressure on Arteta. And as you say, Mikel obviously played alongside Mikel. He is very, very calm. Nothing would seem to get upset him when he was a player. But sometimes when you're in that position as a coach, you might need to react certain ways in certain circumstances, and that's what it might take with Arteta. He might have to start reacting differently and try to get a bit firmer with that group of players. But it's been done before and it's been said before. So there's huge problems, Joe. There is huge problems, and there's going to continue to be huge problems because Arsenal again are in the position where it's almost like they need an overhaul to get the best out of the team. Yeah.
I mean, they just feel increasingly irrelevant as a club. Martin Keown, I don't want to get you in trouble here with your old teammate Arteta, but Martin Keown, I was reading, was on TalkSport on Friday and was saying of Arteta that around the training ground he has a bit of an ego and isn't necessarily universally popular, was the phrase he used. Would that surprise you to hear that about Arteta?
Yeah, it would actually. It would actually. Yeah. Mikel went about his business certainly when he was a player. He wasn't a very loud in the dressing room. He was certainly a player that, obviously, exceptional footballer, brilliant footballer. But he was quiet and thoughtful about how he'd speak to people, and spoke to people in a very respectful manner. Even when I've met him since we've parted ways across our careers, Mikel has always been a good guy as far as I'm concerned, and I don't necessarily see him being that type of character. But again, coaches react differently when they go in that main job and that main position. So I don't know. I couldn't even comment on what Martin Keown's saying there about him, but he's probably getting the word that could be the case. But I would never have seen that about Mikel. No.
You mentioned Everton, so Rafa and Everton. This is like Porrick Joyce going to manage Mayo. This is interesting.
Yeah, I know.
So obviously that was, a good start for them at the weekend. I only saw highlights of this game, and certainly Match of the Day were saying Everton were all about crosses. It was quite direct football in a modern way, not just booting the ball long, but it was exciting, and it kind of suited what Goodison Park traditionally want. Kind of, they're not necessarily a fan base down the years who've watched 100 passes in the build up to a goal. Like even in your day there and Moyes' day, you think of the likes of Baines and Pienaar and just getting forward, getting down the wings, football with a bit of tempo to it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And sometimes when you use the word direct, it's something that's like, they're a direct side long ball team. That certainly wasn't the case this week. And they've got Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who's brilliant in the air. He scored a brilliant diving header for his goal that he scored, but his hold-up play is excellent. Richarlison, he is hit and miss, let's be honest, he is, but when he has his good days, Richarlison's very, very good, and he can be exceptional at times. But you're right in saying that. They signed Andros Townsend and Damari Gray for the reason that Benitez wants a direct side in the way that they're going to be getting into wider areas, getting good crosses into the penalty area, and they have to get bodies obviously in there to get on the end of them. And it was very much like that. It was, but it was exciting to watch. It was good. And if I use, when I'm talking about direct teams, I would call Liverpool a direct team. I think Liverpool are very like that. They play counter-attacking football, get the ball forward quickly and play in the opposition's half. And that's the way that I like to see teams playing. I've always felt that that's exciting to watch. I've always felt that when teams are passing forward, running forward, getting into wider positions, putting early crosses into the penalty area, that's how I like to see my teams playing. And I love to watch teams playing like that. So Everton, under Benitez, I think they're going to go down that sort of way.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and